Okay, you should hear me now. Welcome everybody to Press X Podcast, episode 141. Uh, that I think is the first time I've ever done that. I forgot to unmute myself. So yeah, there we go. I guess it makes sense that would happen. The beginning of this podcast episode. Apologies for being a little bit late. Thank you guys for being patient as always. I was running a little bit behind. I had to make sure to have some tea today because my throat is bothering me a little bit. It's not like sore or anything. It's just, I don't know if maybe it's the dry, cold air, something, but my voice may sound a little bit more gravelly than usual today, or I might have to, speak a little bit closer into the mic, a little bit quieter. I don't want to completely, destroy my voice by the time I get to like the, second hour of the podcast and I have to end it. Although for some people, I think a 2-hour podcast is an entire podcast. So yeah, again, thank you guys so much for being patient and bearing with me as I get everything set up. Decided to change the format here of the podcast a little bit. Wanted to give myself more screen space, take up more of the real estate here. I figured people probably appreciate that a little bit more. Still got my member credits scroll at the bottom. So, yeah, great start to the podcast with the sound just completely cutting out. So, got a couple of super chats here right off the bat. No worries, guys. I will be getting to those momentarily. But before I do that, I want to do my housekeeping at the beginning here. So first and foremost, ways you can help support not only Press X Podcast, but the channel as well. Just simply watching the content, as I always say. So big shout out to everybody who tunes into the podcast, whether you can watch it live or if you watch it later on throughout the week. Really appreciate it. Hitting the like button helps the content. It helps with YouTube's algorithm. So if that's the most you can do is just hit the like button, just know that helps out. But if you want to go above and beyond and you really appreciate what I do here to a significant degree and it's within your means, if you want to donate a super chat, feel free to do that during live streams. And if you want to become a channel member, that's a way you can support me month over month. And so a big shout out and thank you to everybody who continues to support what I do here on the channel. As I always say, I couldn't do what I do here if it wasn't for your continued support. So really sincerely, thank you very much for that. I'm going to move right into my shout outs. First shout out goes to Devil Shooter, who does the timestamps for the podcast each and every week consistently. He does phenomenal timestamps. Usually he can get them up within the first 24 to 48 hours of the show being finished. So shout out to you, Devil Shooter. If you see him in the comments, make sure you give him a big thank you because he really does help me and the community out tremendously each week. We have my Play Has No Limits Plus membership tier. These are individuals who go above and beyond, as well as the Play Has No Limits tier. So I'm going to give them a quick shout out. A big shout out to Lefty Cross, Chris B, PlayStation Pete, Padsy, Pragmaticat, Skin Tight Salmon, Nakamichi, Hidden Leaf Tutaka, Whiskey Gaming, RU46N2 Ray, and Josh Z. Then we're moving on to Play Has No Limits. Shout out to Bear, Sir Speaks A Lot, Introvert Gaming Dude, Michael McCann, MBG9505, DG Ad, Rune Gasoden, Space Gambler Jr., Kevin Kahan, Zenarkan Blitzer, JDTV, Aaron S., Shaky Shako, Tyson Webb 509, and Black Manta 1989. Thank you guys so much for the support each and every month. So, wait, hold on a second. Hold on. I'm all over the place today. Yeah, hold on. Is this episode 141 or no, this is episode 142. My title's correct. So I think in the thumbnail I have 141 and I think I even said at the beginning of this podcast that my apologies. I'll correct that afterwards. I mean, obviously I can't take it back at the beginning when I said it, but when I'm finished the podcast, I'll edit the thumbnail. Yeah, I apologize, guys. I did not sleep much last night, and My main focus is on making sure I can talk through the podcast topics today. So again, bear with me, guys. This is a rough episode so far, but okay. With the housekeeping out of the way, I'm gonna move right into these super chats immediately. We had PlayStation Pete with a $10 donation saying platinumed Ragnarok, struggling with Final Fantasy VII Remake, not used to JRPG combat like systems, not going to buy Final Fantasy VII Rebirth or Final Fantasy 16. My money is on Spider Man 2, Jedi Story, and Call of the Mountain. Yeah, so I think you're talking about Jedi Survivor. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, man, is games like Final Fantasy, they're not necessarily for everyone. I do really enjoy the combat quite significantly in Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I'm really liking what I'm seeing with the combat in Final Fantasy 16. But I can also understand why maybe it's just not for everybody. Spider-Man 2, Star Wars, Jedi Survivor, Call of the Mountain. Either way, I mean, sure, if you miss out on Final Fantasy and you pass on it, I think you're still going to make out pretty good. But also, congratulations on getting the platinum for Ragnarok. I also got the platinum. Hold on one second. Unknown, you're saying MBG last week's is also wrong. Okay, yeah, I'll have to fix that. I don't know what I'm doing out here. Clearly, I've completely mixed up my podcast numbers. So no worries. I'll fix that. I'll correct that after the fact. So no worries. But PlayStation Pete, yeah. I mostly enjoyed getting the platinum for God of War Ragnarok. It wasn't overall a too difficult platinum. It was a little bit challenging, but congratulations on that, man. And yeah, I haven't gotten a new platinum yet in January. I don't know if I'm gonna get a platinum trophy in January because, guys, what I've been playing, I'm still helplessly addicted to Dead by Daylight. I've even thought about creating a second channel called MBG DBD. And all I would do on that channel is stream myself playing Dead by Daylight. Okay? I'm so addicted to this game. Playing as killer, playing as survivor. But the thing about doing that, if I make that second channel, you guys are gonna be like, bro, do you play anything else? Is this all you play? And right now, that's all I'm playing. So I don't know. I'm not. Don't hold me to that. I don't know if I'm going to create a second channel to do that. But I figured I would just let you guys know what I've been playing. Right now, I'm patiently waiting for Dead Space remake. But yeah, completely addicted to Dead by Daylight. Been playing the crap out of that game. Yeah, I see some of you guys in the chat saying I should do it. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to put that on the regular channel, or if I did, I would unlist it afterwards because I don't want to spam too much content. I feel like I create daily content as is. I see somebody asking, have I gotten the platinum for Dead by Daylight? I have, yeah. I don't have every trophy for Dead by Daylight. That would be that would be expensive. Okay, to get every trophy in Dead by Daylight, you would have to buy every survivor, every killer, because they each come with a set of trophies. So that'd be very, very expensive. But you're saying you'll get over Dead by Daylight. I did 3 years ago. Well, I started playing Dead by Daylight, I think, a year and a half ago, and I got really, really addicted to it. I put like 400 hours into it easily. And then I took a long break from it. And just recently, in the past month and a half or so, I went back to it and got re-addicted. So yeah. As you can tell, this is why I'm not opposed to Sony putting out some live service games, because I can't deny it. I can't lie. I get addicted to some of these multiplayer games, man. I really do. So yeah. We have New Soul 9. Thank you for the $10 donation, man. You're saying, MBG, hear me out. What if you can use PlayStation VR2 headset to control the Sony car without having to physically be in the car? Oh, you know what, man? Normally, I would say that sounds insane. Normally, I would say, why would anybody want to do something like that? But that car itself is pretty insane. Now, I don't plan on talking about this Sony car. That's not a topic I have listed, but the one, 45 camera sensors on a car. This is a car of the future. Sony's going all in with this. I don't know. I don't know if this Sony car is going to work. I don't know if people are going to actually take to it. But I could see things going really wrong, frankly. Like I think in the distant future, people driving cars with headsets and not actually having to physically be in the car, I could see that happening in the future. Yeah. But I think it's a little bit too soon. I think that would that would maybe wreak some havoc, cause some issues. I don't know that the technology is all there yet. It could be, I don't know. But I'm telling you, the funniest thing about Sony's CES conference was when they brought Epic Games out, and there's just a Sony, like the imagery was cursed. The image was forever cursed, where you have a Sony car up on stage, and then you have an Epic Games executive standing in front of it, and then the picture behind the car just says Fortnite, and I'm like, what is this? Something seems off here. What's going on? So that was pretty funny. But overall, yeah, that's one of the things we're going to talk about a little bit during this podcast episode. We're going to talk about Sony's presence at CES 2023. They definitely had some announcements. One of the things we're going to be talking about over the course of this podcast episode are some major PlayStation leaks that are coming out. I'm not sure how many of you tuned into the video that I released yesterday. I actually put out 2 videos yesterday. The second video I put out actually talked about a 4chan leak. And I know it's 4chan, so immediately it's like, roll your eyes, like, okay, here we go. However, after we went over that leak, something that I noticed, and I think many of you who watched the video also noticed, is that this leak seemed incredibly plausible. There was a lot on this leak that actually seemed like, yeah, this could be real. And there were a few things in there that were a little bit surprising. Not so surprising that it makes you take a step back and be like, yeah, that's completely bogus. They were surprising in the sense that, I had no idea Sony would be working on something like that, but it's not so outlandish. It's not so wishful thinking that it seems impossible. So we're going to talk a little bit about that leak, but here's the thing. After uploading that video, we actually had another PlayStation leak. Apparently a new IP that is being developed by a studio that's working with Sony XDev. And this new IP is apparently a sci-fi RPG. And 5 seconds of this new sci-fi RPG, this new IP actually leaked out, and it looks really rough. Okay. It's pretty clear that this is like internal testing, prototype, pre-alpha footage. However, within that 5 seconds of footage that we saw, there's something there. There's definitely something interesting there that I think, I don't know, it has people kind of excited, because something that people have been asking Sony for some time now is more RPGs, right? Like, we have seen Sony approach the single player narrative driven game, with great success, and they've continued that, and they've had consistency, and they will continue to have consistency. But this new game, it's apparently being leaked from a credible source. The source is the same person that apparently leaked out Returnal coming to PC, and actually leaked out images of it, I think, before anybody else did. So they're definitely reliable to a certain extent. And, there's nothing about this that tells us it's fake. I mean, we straight up have footage. So, the question I have a few questions. Number one, who's the studio that's developing this? I've heard rumors that it's Sumo Digital working on this game. but we don't have confirmation of that. The second question I have is exactly how early in development is this game, right? Because it looked pretty early, but there's this massive landscape. So just to give you an image of what the footage was of this leak, it was of it would look like a male soldier, like a space soldier of some kind. It looked kind of reminiscent of Mass Effect, and he was holding a rifle, and that imagery just immediately made people think Mass Effect. But then he was on some kind of walkway where you look out into the distance, and there's just this giant eye in the sky. It looks a lot like Sauron, I guess, from Lord of the Rings. And there's just like this, I don't even know what you would call it, like just this eldritch looking creature of some kind. You're saying Dust Golem says the footage was years old. Yeah, that's exciting and that's promising. That gets me excited because, like, you know, when you see footage that's looks like it's pre-alpha like that, you begin to think, well, you know, it's hard to get excited because could be like 5 years away, right? But if it's already like, you know, if it's already like 3-4 years in development, it could be a lot closer than we think. So that definitely caught me by surprise. I wasn't expecting that. Again, I really want to know who the studio is, and I hope to learn more about it because it looks like it has some serious potential. It really does. And I, for one, am somebody who would love to see Sony diversify. You know, that one of the things that I'm really looking forward to is, yeah, I'm excited for Spider-Man 2. Yeah, I'm excited for Final Fantasy 16, for sure. But I'm really excited to see some diverse game announcements coming from Sony in the next couple of years. I feel like Sony has played it relatively safe at the beginning of the PlayStation 5 generation. They've done a great job, you know, like having games like Spider-Man Miles Morales, Demon Souls Remake, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, GT7, Horizon, God of War, and also Returnal, new IP from them, very successful. But generally speaking, I think Sony's been playing it relatively safe, and I feel like, you know, following them for years now and all the studios and the different projects they're working on, yeah, I think we're going to get some very surprising and exciting announcements. Salty Queefs, nice name, says, hey, MBG, just platinumed Ghost of Tsushima last night. Everything about the game was amazing, and I can't wait for a sequel. Also, do you think Sony will create a COD-style game to compete against the Activision deal? Well, first of all, congratulations on the Ghost of Tsushima Platinum. I agree. I think that Ghost of Tsushima is an amazing game as well. It's one of the best games I've played, one of my favorite games. Absolutely cannot wait to see what they do with the sequel. Now you're asking me, do I think Sony will create a COD-style game to compete with, you know, what Microsoft's doing with Activision? Well, I think so. I do. I say this because Sony has first-person shooters in development, too. Not even counting Bungie, okay? So we could count Bungie. But the two that were announced a little while ago, Deviation Games, this is a partner studio. This is a studio that has a lot of Call of Duty veterans, ironically enough. And they're working on a cutting-edge first-person shooter for PlayStation. It's going to be exclusive. So depending on how they handle that, yeah, that could end up being Sony's COD competitor of some kind. But they're also working with another studio called Firewalk. And I think Firewalk, we may actually see the game from them sooner rather than later. Who knows? Maybe that game that leaked out was the game from Firewalk. But I'm pretty sure it was confirmed they're working on a first-person shooter. And, you know, I think it was 2021, actually, when Herman Hulst made the announcement. He talked about it. And Herman Hulst made it pretty clear that, you know, that this game from Firewalk that they're making for PS5, first-person shooter, it's going to be a live service game. It was pretty far along in development. I think he said that he even played a little bit of it or got to see somebody play it. So it was in a playable state back in 2021. Let me adjust my microphone a little bit here. I got to get it really close to my mouth because my throat is not doing so good today. But yeah, you know, I think that between these two games, we could definitely see Sony enter the first-person shooter space in a big way, and then obviously with Bungie jumping in with Marathon, Revival, and other things that they're working on. Yeah, I see some big things happening. I'm going to move this over here. I'm going to need this. I'm going to need this at the ready. So, yeah, just a sec here, guys. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I don't know, man. I this sucks when this happens because this is what I do here. I talk, right? And if I'm losing my voice, I'm gonna have some problems. Do I have any throat lozenges? Yeah, actually, not on me, but maybe I could get some in a little bit. I'll just keep this over here. That'll be fine. But yeah, I do think Sony is in the process of, trying to get a shooter of some kind that has the potential to compete to some degree with Call of Duty. I don't think that Sony is going to be able to make a Call of Duty themselves. I don't think they'll be able to have I don't think they'll be able to have a game that big. But I think they could get a lot closer than maybe people believe. So, thank you for that, Salty. And we have Ivanoa Kachoful. Again, I never know if I'm saying your name correctly. I'll just call you Ivanoa, I guess. Saying, hey, MBG, did you see a tweeter saying that Microsoft will shut down Xbox? No, to be honest, Ivan, I think you're going to have to give me some more context here if you're able to, because there's a lot of stuff on Twitter. Okay, and I go on Twitter somewhat frequently, and I see a lot of crap. And I mean, I would like to know who's saying that, and I think based off of who's saying it, we could immediately determine whether or not there's any credibility, because that doesn't make any sense. I don't think Microsoft would ever shut down Xbox at the end of the day. Okay. One thing we have to think about is worst case scenario. What happens to Xbox? Worst case scenario, what I see happening if this $68 billion deal for Activision goes through after spending $7.5 billion on Bethesda, 5, 8, 10 years from now, if they just can't get Game Pass into a good state and it just can't catch on the way that they need it to in order to eventually become profitable, worst case scenario, I see Microsoft spinning Xbox off, not necessarily shutting it down completely. But I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, to me, the fact that Microsoft is willing to spend $68 billion, I think that says everything we need to know when it comes to Microsoft's plans for Xbox in the future. Ivan, you're saying I will send it to Twitter. Okay. All right, man. Yeah, I'll see if I can check that out. But yeah, so let me give you guys a quick rundown. Well, here's the thing. I'm not going to bother doing a rundown of the topics we're going to discuss because I do this every week. And the reality is I end up not covering at least 2 of the topics that I claim I'm going to cover. So I'm just not going to do that. Instead, I'm just going to dive right into these topics. Okay. Now, I want to do this because I think it'll just be fun to do this live. Let me bring it up here. Actually, I'm seeing. Okay, hold on. I want to talk more about this leaked PlayStation IP before I move forward because there's more information that came out. This is coming from the Gaming Leaks and Rumors subreddit. Leaked gameplay footage, alpha footage of a new PlayStation IP. The source claims that the game is a sci-fi RPG based in Unreal Engine 5. Okay, so it's a UE5 game. It's being developed through XDev in partnership with an external studio. The studio behind it is still unknown. However, we do know that they're based in Europe. Okay. So that whittles things down a little bit. Dusk Golem confirmed this to be the Ooze game and that this footage is from an old build. So Yeah, that's something that's really interesting. Dusk Golem, who's proven to be a pretty reliable leaker in some areas, he confirmed a while ago, or teased, I should say, a game called like Project Ooze that, he was waiting to get announced and it hasn't happened yet. So apparently this is that game. The game was, so this is important. It says this game was not part of the leaked PlayStation document from a few months ago. That means that this is not Project Carbon or anything else that was listed there. That's pretty important to actually note, because that leaked PlayStation document gave us a lot of information about a lot of games that were not announced yet. And, I think it's understandable why people would assume like, oh, well, maybe this is Project Carbon that's listed there or something along those lines. But it's not. So again, you just kind of begin to see that Sony clearly has just so many different projects in the works that are in the early stages or been in the works for some time, and they just have yet to announce it. But it continues here by saying Dusk Golem actually commented on Reset Era, and he says, quote, "While obviously I can't say if this will come out or not, I'll mention I personally have seen a lot more of this game and more recent stuff of this game than this clip. Not this clip, but the game itself beyond this clip is at least at a point currently where it's fully voice acted, music composed specifically for it, been far more fine-tuned in this clip." I do want to say real quick, could this be Helldivers 2? Could this be Helldivers? I feel like it might be, man. I don't know. Third person, over the shoulder, AAA. So I know that Helldivers 1 is not a sci-fi RPG. It is sci-fi, but it's not an RPG. But if they really wanted to put a twist on things, Helldivers 2, from what we've heard, is getting the AAA treatment. It's going to be a game as a service. This could fall in line with that, man. I will say I would be quite shocked if this was Helldivers 2. I say that because, my God, you want to talk about ramping things up, to make it AAA, to AAA-ify a game. That this would be it. Apparently, Dusk Golem also said, decided to read people's reactions of Project Ooze. It's a nickname I attribute to the project rather than what it will be called. The nickname will make more and more sense when people see more of this, whenever they do. It's a very ooey gooey game, more than this clip even suggests. Okay, I don't know. Like, what the hell are we supposed? Like, what does that even mean, bro? Like, what are we supposed to? Hey guys, this leaked PlayStation IP. Guess what? It's going to be an ooey gooey game. Doesn't that sound like what are you talking about? Like, tell us what the hell the game's going to be like. This is what I hate about these insiders a lot of times, man. Is they always like to talk in code and riddles, and as Kratos says, just speak plain. Just speak plain, That's all you got to do. I don't mind a little bit of teasing here and there, but when it becomes like a whole thing, like, I hate it when we are hearing, like, when somebody's trying to explain something as an insider, and it's just like, what are you talking about? Like, no one knows what you're talking about. Okay, hold on. Here's an interesting one. There's an update to this story that says a recent finding seems to indicate that the studio behind this title might be People Can Fly. Okay, well, first off, I want to say a lot of people are saying that this. I don't know how many of you guys in the chat. I'm not going to bring the footage up. I'm not going to bring it up because I don't want to get a copyright or anything like that. But a lot of people are saying that this footage really reminds them a lot, and it reminded me a lot of Resistance. Now, I don't think it's Resistance. I think if it was Resistance, we would know. It's a new IP, but it does look very inspired by Resistance. And I think that a lot of people might be excited about that. And I don't know how many of you guys, actually saw, this footage, but I'm excited for it, man. Like, I want to see this game, and People Can Fly. Are they the ones who did Outriders? Is that what the game's called? People Can Fly. I'm pretty sure they did that game, right? You know what? It does look reminiscent of Starhawk a little bit, or yeah. A little bit. They did Painkiller, Bulletstorm. Okay, well, I mean, we'll see, man. I did play Outriders, actually. It was okay. It was like Outriders it's a pretty, I'm going to get to these super chats in just a second, guys. Outriders is a pretty generic game. It's not bad. It's not very good. It's serviceable. It's like, it's a good game. It's a decent game. Like it's just one of those games where if you like looter shooters, you can get into it. And I ended up just getting into it, got the platinum for it, and I was like, oh, yeah, I enjoyed that. It was it was a pretty decent experience. So you guys saying, at least somebody says it sucks. I mean, yeah, I didn't hate it. Like I was hesitant with it, but I'm kind of a sucker for looter shooters sometimes. You know what game I really liked that I actually also got a platinum for? The Division 2. The Division 2 is an amazing game. That was a really, really good time. Let me see. New Soul 9, you're saying, MBG, you said in one of the videos that you wouldn't mind if Sony puts their subscription services in smart TVs, like Game Pass. Wouldn't that affect the traditional mode? Just want to get your honest thoughts. Well, if I'm understanding what you're asking here, New Soul 9, and thank you for the 10. I guess you're asking, like, won't this affect... you're either asking one of two things. You're either asking if this would affect the traditional, like, console model that Sony follows, or will this affect basically... Oh, sorry, New Soul 9. I totally missed that you actually corrected yourself here underneath. So you said, wouldn't that affect the traditional model? Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Because I was assuming it was one of two things. So I appreciate the clarification. So basically what you're asking is if Sony put their subscription service like PS Plus, Extra, or Premium onto smart TVs like Game Pass, wouldn't this have a big effect on the traditional model that Sony follows? It's hard to say. I used to be of the mindset, yes, absolutely. I used to be of the mindset that this would hurt the console, this would hurt the console model, this would kill the console, and I used to feel the same way about, PlayStation games going to PC. But as time has went on and as Sony and Microsoft have begun to branch out even further, I'm not so sure anymore. And the reason why I say this is because I feel like there are two types of people, okay, when it comes to, I want to call it traditional gaming or, core gaming. Like I'm not necessarily referring to, people who are downloading games on their phone to play for like 5 minutes at a time just to kill time. I'm talking about people who are just interested in AAA video games. I think that's really what I'm trying to say. I think there are two types of people when it comes to those who are interested in AAA games. I think that there are those like us, like me, and I'm assuming most of you, or pretty much everybody here right now, where you're really in it, right? You don't necessarily have a problem with paying a couple of $100, $400, $500 for a console to get that experience. Or if you're a PC gamer, you don't mind, investing in a decent or even very good gaming PC to enjoy these games. And, it's you don't even put a second thought into it. You know what I mean? Like this is just how you play your games. This is how you've always played your games. It's how you're always going to play your games. And I feel like the other person is somebody that's much more malleable, much more hesitant, much more unsure. I think that these are the individuals that, they might buy a PlayStation console. They might consider investing in a gaming PC, or maybe they'll buy an Xbox console, but only under very specific circumstances. There has to be one or a few very select games that is going to push them over the edge. And even then, they still might not budge. Or there might be those people who, they just buy a console because for them it's just the most convenient, easiest way to play games like Call of Duty or their sports games, whatever it may be. And I feel like there is a chance that if Sony put something like PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium onto smart TVs, you would have to stream them through through the cloud. So the first thing that people would have to ask themselves, even people who are, maybe not so keen on spending $500 for a console, should I pay $500 for a PS5, or should I just subscribe to PS Plus on my TV, buy a controller, and just play it through the cloud? That's the first thing they're going to have to ask themselves. And I feel like that automatically, quite a few people, even if they're not core gamers, right? Like hardcore gamers, I think quite a few people are going to at least be somewhat skeptical about playing a game through the cloud. Then again, though, it is 2023, and a lot of people might just think to themselves, that's just normal, like that's just a thing today, right? And it should work flawlessly. And maybe it would work flawlessly, but I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is I don't think that if Sony were to follow Microsoft's footsteps, right? I don't think if Sony were to announce, hey, we're going to make PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium available through our Sony TVs at first, then maybe expand them to other TVs eventually. And because that would actually help sell Sony TVs as well, if you think about it. I don't think that that's going to result in suddenly millions, like tens of millions of people who are planning on buying PlayStation consoles at some point in time completely foregoing it. I could be completely wrong in that assessment. And I think it's one of those things where we don't really know. Sony doesn't know. Microsoft doesn't know. You could say that, oh, well, Microsoft is still selling millions of consoles. They're still selling millions of consoles, and they've had Game Pass available on like Samsung TVs and whatnot and phones. But the thing about that is we're still early into the generation. We can say right now that, oh, Microsoft putting their services across all these different devices had no negative impact on their traditional console model or their console sales. We don't know that yet. Microsoft could end up hitting a wall at some point that was maybe unexpected, and that wall that they're going to hit came up much sooner because it turns out that maybe millions of people were just thinking to themselves, yeah, I'll just play Game Pass on my through my TV or on my phone. And, maybe Xbox controller sales shoot up, but we don't know. We don't know how this would ultimately affect console sales. But if I had to make my own prediction and my own assumption, I would say that, so if we take the PS5, for example, the PS5 is undoubtedly going to be 100 million console seller. I have no doubt about that. I could see it going beyond that to 100. I could see it maybe eventually matching the PS4. And who knows, depending on how amazing the games are that Sony has lined up, towards the end of this generation, maybe the PS5 could sell beyond the PS4. So if the PS5 is on track to hit 100 million, let's just say 100 million consoles sold by the end of this generation, let's say that this year, it's not going to happen, but just bear with me here. This year, Sony says, hey, we're putting PS Plus on TVs and smartphones, and you're going to be able to just stream your games there. I don't think that's going to mean that, oh, well, you could have sold 100 million PS5s, but now you're only going to sell 80 million because 20 million people are now just going to play their games through your cloud. So I don't see that happening. I could see it being 1 million, 3 million, 5 million maybe, but I don't see it going to some insanely high number. I think most people who want to play AAA games want to do so natively. Now, could this change dramatically as time goes on and as cloud services improve? Absolutely. Yeah, it could change over time. And I think Microsoft is banking on that. They're kind of ahead of the curve in a way. But, that's my thoughts on it. I think it will affect the traditional model to a degree, but not as heavily as I think maybe I used to think. We'll see, though. We'll see. Himanshu Yadav, you're saying, MBG, do you think developers are allowed to talk about their family, talk to their family about an unannounced project? What if they tell the kids and the kids spread the news on the net/school? Well, Himanshu, I'll tell you this. I think that every, I don't know. I mean, that's a pretty good question when it comes to the kids because, like, you have to assume that most people, like, let's say at Insomniac Games, they're, well, maybe not that because they already announced that game. We could just say like the next Naughty Dog game, like a new IP or something. Most of these people are probably telling their significant others and maybe their closest friends that they truly trust. But I don't think like, I don't imagine most developers who are signing NDAs, like I'm sure they're not going to their teenage kids or young kids and telling them explicitly like, oh my God, like look at this game we're working on and giving all these details because yeah, like that is something that could happen. If they have like family that's into this stuff, yeah, I don't think that it would be wise to kind of share that info. I'm sure it does happen though. I'm sure it does happen, but I don't think it's like Sony is monitoring their employees when they go home. And if you utter a single word about a project that you're working on internally, so suddenly Sony breaks into your home and captures you and your family and holds you hostage. I don't think it's nothing like that. Definitely nothing like that. But I guess what I'll say is that I'm sure that these developers who are working on these super secretive projects, they're definitely pressed to not share anything, to not talk about it. Like the idea is do not talk about this game and your work outside of the office. Just don't do it. Don't do it. Like if I was a game dev and I was working on some super secret project, I'd talk to my wife about it, of course, but that's probably about it. Maybe like my best friend that I could trust, and that's about it. I wouldn't go around like casually talk, if I was at like some kind of family outing or something or family get together, I wouldn't like, go up to an uncle or something or a cousin and be like, let me tell you about this game I'm working on and give you all the details. It's not smart, not smart. So that's an interesting question. I see somebody saying in the chat that they definitely would do that. It might happen a lot more than we think. The truth is, yeah, if I had to assume, it probably does happen more than we think, but people just don't, I don't think they care that much. You know what I mean? Like, gaming is big, but when it comes to like really paying close attention to like things leaking out in the industry, most people are not aware, nor do they care. That's just how it is. Ivan, you're saying I already sent the tweet about it. I'll see if I can find it, man. What is this? Found something here. Okay, this is the report about Gears of Effect. I'm just seeing something here about the leaked RPG game. Yeah, I'll see if I can get to it, Ivan. I'm not seeing it come up. I don't know why. Let me check all real quick. I don't know if you posted it underneath my tweet, maybe. Either way, I'll go back to it at some point. Maybe you can let me know where you posted it exactly, because it's not. For some reason, when people send me stuff, it just like doesn't show up. I don't know why. Maybe you could just tell me who said it. Maybe I can look them up. All right, sorry. Rice Pudding member for 8 months saying, PSA, PS Plus is on sale 30 to 40% for new and expired subscribers. Well, that's a great PSA. Actually didn't know that. So there you go, everybody. If you're looking to renew PlayStation Plus anytime soon, 30 to 40% off. Go for it. Now's the time. Michael Lynch, thank you for the 10, man. You're saying, I put a Corsair MP600 Pro 2 terabyte SSD in my PS5 last night. Started moving a couple of games over, and it only took like 1 minute for each game to transfer. So awesome. Yeah, there you go, man. It's funny because I remember when Mark Cerny announced that this was the approach that Sony was taking. Mark Cerny announced, we're going to allow people to pick out what type of SSDs they want, put them into their PS5. And at the time, some people acted really annoyed by this, and they talked about it like this was a bad decision. And they even made it sound like Sony should have done what Sony should have done what Microsoft did, which was make a proprietary SSD. And as time has went on, you can clearly see we're in the third year of this generation. Sony definitely made the right call, allowing people to choose what SSD they want to put inside their console, because I've only seen the price of the proprietary Xbox SSD go up. I highly doubt people are buying it, and I've only seen more and more people basically explain that they just really like having that option. They like having the option to pick out which SSD they want, how much storage they want. And, it's funny because it is funny to look back and how people were acting like it was some kind of rocket science, like true rocket science to figure out how to put the SSD inside your PS5. And in reality, look, I understand for some people it could be a little bit daunting, but like just watch a video on it, even I think, even Sony, I think, put out a freaking video on it. So good. It's good to hear that, man. I haven't upgraded my storage yet in the PS5. I haven't had a need to, although I think that time might be approaching sometime soon. So if I ever do, I'll let you know. The screwdriver gate. Yeah. What? So dumb, man. So dumb. So thank you for that, Michael. But something else I want to cover here in regards to leaks. You may have watched my video yesterday where we went over this 4chan leak. How many of you here right now watched that video? I'm just curious because I don't want to... why is this coming up? Hold on, I gotta fix that. I wasn't trying to bring it up. Well, there we go. Well, anyway, let me know how many of you guys watch this because I want to go over it here. I didn't want to bring it up on screen because it's like, I have a whole video on it where it's on the side of the screen, so I don't normally bring stuff up on the screen during the podcast. But looking over here, this leak is tough because it's like, yeah, it's 4chan. It's hard to believe. You don't want to... You're saying two monitors, cough, cough. Yeah, I mean, I could do that too, I guess. But there are just some things in here that I want to discuss with you guys because it's very interesting to me. First and foremost, when it comes to Sony's plans for stated plays and a showcase, this leak is claiming that Sony is going to be doing a stated play in February and then another one in March. And that right off the bat, I don't know because when has Sony ever done a back-to-back stated plays like that? I think that would be like a first. But secondly, they say that there's also going to be another one in May. Now, they're claiming there's going to be 3 stated plays leading up to a June showcase. Now, I think I glossed over this a little bit in my video yesterday, and that's why I wanted to talk about it a little bit more, because the more I thought about this, I'm like, this sounds kind of unbelievable. However, there is one part of this there is one part of this that does make me think maybe it could be true. There's two things. Number one, PlayStation VR. Okay, PlayStation VR is a thing that's coming out. Okay, at the end of February. So the idea that Sony would have a small dedicated state of play just for PSVR 2 leading into the launch of it in February, that actually makes sense. And then doing a regular state of play in March also makes sense because, people, let's be honest, if Sony announces a dedicated PSVR 2 state of play in February, there's going to be a lot of people disappointed because a lot of people aren't planning on buying PSVR 2. So then doing a regular one in March to, kind of give something to PS5 owners who don't care about PSVR 2, and whatnot, that would make sense. And then a state of play in May, that actually would make sense because I have no doubt in my mind Sony's going to want to do a dedicated state of play for Final Fantasy 16. So even though initially I thought maybe that's unrealistic, when you think about the timing of these, they actually make sense. And then a showcase in June. Oh boy. Showcase in June. Now, something else I want to mention about this that makes it a little bit more believable, the second thing, is that this could be a great way for Sony to make up for lost time. All right. For not doing a showcase. For not doing a showcase in 2022. Doing this, having this many things planned out could help. You're saying it was the guy, U72. Go check him out real quick. Let's see. For some reason, nobody's coming up. I don't know why. Well, I'll be honest, Ivan. I have not heard of this individual. Maybe, I don't know if anybody in the chat has anybody heard of this individual. Usovini 2. Oh, it's not 2. It's just Usovini. Sorry, I read that wrong. Nope, that's definitely not the person. Yeah, I don't know, man. I think I found the dude. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I see what you're talking about. Yeah, this is dumb, dude. So it looks like a 4chan post where somebody anonymously claims that that Microsoft is shutting down, and this person this person definitely, he wasn't agreeing. He wasn't saying, yeah, it's going to shut down. This was definitely supposed to be sarcasm. But just for fun, let's read what the post says. It says, from an anonymous source, I have some more bad news for all Xbox fans. The company is shutting Xbox down for failing to meet its targets and produce adequate profit for the company. CEO Satya Nadella is unhappy with the results of Game Pass and it being able to reach targets and the lack of profit being made. The division is going to be slowly liquidated. Some studios will be sold onto the likes of EA and Take-Two, but others like 343 Industries will be completely shut down. Bethesda will likely be sold off as a package. Like, what? I love the idea of like Microsoft just bought Bethesda and they're like, you know what? We're gonna sell them. Like, bro. So apparently Bethesda's likely going to be sold off as a package deal. Phil Spencer's leaving the company at the end of the month and retiring. Other employees will be allocated new roles within Microsoft. There is no word yet if they're going to sell the IP they own, but it's likely going to be Embracer or Amazon. Oh my God. Dude, I gotta admit, that's pretty funny. That's pretty funny, bro. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I'm actually glad I came across that because that's a look. I understand what the poster's trying to achieve here, but it's not. Yeah, it's not going to work like that. Phil Spencer's going to get fired at the end of the month. Maybe that's why Phil Spencer looks so unhappy at the Game Awards. Maybe it's because he knows. He's like, it's over. It's over, you know? Um, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't. I will say this, though. There isn't going to be anybody anytime soon that takes Phil Spencer's spot. The reason being is because, Game Pass is Phil's idea. Game Pass is Phil's, you know, his idea, I guess. So, and he's the one who convinced Microsoft to go all in on it. So, yeah, I don't think he's going to be going anywhere anytime soon. He's got a seat at the big boy table at Microsoft now too. Snuffy, you're saying just saw at Kevin G pop up in the chat. I wanted to say thank you again for the Horizon Forbidden West code. Also, this community. Just wanted to give a shout out to him. I absolutely love Horizon. Thank you. Oh, that's awesome, Snuffy. Thank you for sending in that super chat because yeah, that was something we did my last podcast of 2022. Kevin G offered to, put a code for Horizon Forbidden West in the chat, and I told him to just, put it in there, throw it in the air, let's see who gets it. And so it's awesome to hear that somebody who didn't have the game got it and is able to enjoy it. So yeah, I love it, man. That's why I love this community. You guys are awesome. Appreciate everything you do. So thank you again, Kevin G and Snuffy. We have Planet Schlorpian saying, why do Xbox fanboys spooge themselves over mediocrity and trash great games? I mean, I guess I'd be subconsciously jealous if my console had no games too. Well, you know what, man? I will say this. I've been not paying close attention, but I've heard what some Xbox enthusiasts, I guess I'll call them, have been saying about Xbox in 2022. And, some people are calling a spade, as they should. And they're basically just saying, dude, this was like literally the worst year for Xbox in its history. Like they had a whole year of literally nothing of consequence. And that's coming off of the failure that was Halo Infinite. And obviously, it's actually, I want to mention this too. Did you guys hear about apparently Xbox doing a showcase, or they're calling it a showcase of some kind, happening at the end of this month, where it almost sounds like an Xbox version of State of Play, where they want to, I guess, highlight and hype people up for games that are coming in the next couple of months. And, I got to admit, if there's one game that I'm somewhat interested in, like I'm not fully sold on it yet, but I don't know, man. At first I was like, I don't think I'm feeling this game. But then I'm seeing some screenshots of it and I'm like, I don't know. Not Starfield, actually. Redfall. Redfall is a game I'm actually somewhat interested in. I don't know that I'm interested enough to go back on my Xbox account and get all that stuff. I might. I don't know. I got to see more of it. Yeah, I need to see more gameplay. But I'm a big fan of Left 4 Dead, and at first, I'm gonna be honest, the first trailer I ever saw of Redfall really rubbed me the wrong way. It just made me cringe. I'm like, okay, like a CG trailer that's clearly trying to be cool. And I just wasn't feeling it. But the gameplay, I don't know. It looks like it could have some potential. But that's the thing, man, is I'm seeing rumors start to circulate that apparently some Xbox people, I don't know if was it Colt Eastwood, I don't know. Somebody basically came out and said that they've been hearing from internal playtesters that Starfield is surpassing expectations and more ambitious than they thought. And I'm like, well, it should be, right? It better be. Look, I don't think Starfield's going to fail. Okay, I don't think Starfield was ever going to fail. It's a new. It is a new game from Bethesda. It's their first game in, I don't know how long, over a decade. I think if there's one thing that could hurt Starfield, it's the thing. I think it's the thing that everybody's kind of focused on, and that is it going to be like, how buggy is it going to be? And I think the margin of error when it comes to bugs for Starfield is very high. Like, I think people are going to be very tolerant, but we all know the game's going to come in hot. There's no doubt about that. My only question is, how hot is the game going to come in? How hot is it going to come in? Because like, there's a threshold, right, where it's like a game can be buggy, and a lot of times, especially with a studio that has a reputation of that, it can be, I don't know, like, people can have fun with it, I guess, and mess around. But it's going to have to reach that threshold, obviously. And I don't know, I did see some people were nervous that maybe the game's going to get delayed again or whatever. And I don't know, man. We'll see. I've never been interested in Bethesda RPGs. But I gotta admit, I am gonna enjoy watching the rollout of Starfield and just seeing, like, dude, Xbox has needed this for so long, man. Like, for so long. It's actually quite sad, where Xbox has been in desperate, dire need for just a smash hit all around. It's a joke to me looking back when Halo Infinite launched. People were acting like this was the smash hit, and it wasn't. Like, it just wasn't. Like, it got great reviews up front, and the game imploded on itself over the course of the next year. Like, people left the studio. The Bonnie Ross left, right? Supposedly for family things, but it's like the timing, like, really? And it's just been years of Microsoft trying to have a game that gets that universal praise, that gets that attention, that, big games that Sony puts out, big games that Nintendo put out, that they get. And we could say Forza Horizon 5, and I'm not trying to take anything away from that. I'm not trying to take anything away from Forza Horizon 5, because yeah, it's a great game. And I think Playground Games is right now the best studio from what I've seen that Microsoft has, first party. But I just feel like Microsoft still hasn't had that breakout game, like a new game, I think is really what I'm trying to say right now. It's been a long, long time since Microsoft has put out a new game that just took over and really, I think, got people to that level of excitement. And I think Starfield has to be that game, dude. It has to. And, if it's not, I don't know at that point. I don't know. I look at Starfield and I think to myself, how could it not be? How could Starfield not be that game? It has to be. It has to be. So I'm going to be interested to see. I'm not, I haven't been following what people are saying about Starfield too much, but I hope it's true. Like, I'm not trying to take pity on Xbox or Xbox fans, but it's like I hope that things turn around for Xbox in 2023 in a big way, because they need it, dude. I'll tell you right now, if I went a whole year playing my PlayStation, like as a PlayStation 5 owner, as a PlayStation fan, and Sony basically was just like, yeah, we don't have anything of significance this year. You're going to have to wait till 2023. I'd be really, really pissed, but I'd be like, you know what? All right, Sony, then you better bring it in 2023. You better bring it. And hopefully they do. I mean, Microsoft's got it. They have to. There's no way. There's just no way. at this point that they can screw it up. Planet Schlorpian, again, you're saying Starfield won't fail per se, but it has a lot to prove after Fallout 76, and Bethesda games are largely outdated by modern standards. Starfield looked no different. Yeah, I mean, again, I was not impressed with what I saw from Starfield. At least from like the character models and stuff. It's like, yeah, you could tell there's some, but then again, it's like you could also maybe look at a game like Elden Ring and argue that some of that tech is outdated as well, but that didn't stop people from, universally saying, dude, this game's awesome. And I could see a similar situation with Starfield happening. But I agree. I don't think it's going to fail. Like, dude, Starfield would have to come in as broken as like Cyberpunk did to fail. That's because I'm telling you now, like, people are Bethesda's going to get a big pass on a lot of things with this game right out of the gate. And that's fine. But in order for Starfield to fail, it would have to do something like cataclysmic. Like, there would have to be something catastrophically wrong with the game, I think, for it to truly fail. But I think, the question that I'm asking with Starfield is not necessarily, will it fail? It's, will it live up to that high bar that fans have and that people expect, And we'll see, man. We'll see. I'm not rooting against it. Rari2XX, you're saying the thing is that Fallout 4 was a tremendous failure for Bethesda games. Starfield does have frame rate issues. I wish none but the best. SM2 soon. Yeah, man, I again, like, I've never really gotten into the Fallout series, but you're not the first person I've heard say that like Fallout 4 just wasn't their thing. I know Fallout 76 was not good for Bethesda and their reputation. Yeah, we'll see, Rory. We'll see if this game is a return to form for Bethesda. I think a lot of people really want it to be. Todd Howard, obviously, he's like a legend in the industry, so we'll see, man. We'll see. We're getting closer and closer. And you meant Fallout 4 over time was like, Rory, you corrected yourself by saying I meant Fallout 4 over time was lacking in content. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm assuming that if we are going to get some kind of Xbox showcase before the end of the month, that we will end up seeing more Starfield, obviously. Saying Fallout 4 was way better than 76. Yeah, maybe I was getting the two confused there. I don't know. Easy E, you're saying, I don't think Starfield will be that game for Xbox. Redfall, I believe, has a better shot. That's interesting. That would be, I think, quite a surprise, is if Redfall came out and like somehow garnered more traction than That would be shocking, frankly. I don't think that's going to happen, but it could be. And again, like, dude, look, we've talked about Microsoft lacking new IP and being able to really bring out new and exciting games. And I'm not saying that like it's necessarily wrong that they bought Bethesda and like the two new IP Xbox games that you're going to get are from a company that Microsoft had to buy and slap the Xbox logo on. And look, I get it. Sony has to do that too sometimes. Granted, Sony doesn't like buy the company outright and own the IP. They strike these deals, these second and third party deals. I get it. But this is why I'm more interested to see what Xbox studios do, if that makes sense. Not Bethesda. Because I think Bethesda, they're in a way, I want to say they're too big to fail in some areas. But either way, man, who cares? Microsoft paid for it. If I were Microsoft, I'd say it doesn't matter. If I was an Xbox fan, I'd say it doesn't matter. Dude, Microsoft bought it fair and square and they slapped the Xbox logo on it. So it is what it is. All's fair in love and more, right? Subtext, you're saying, I know you skipped your topics, but which one were you most excited to talk about? Well, I was excited to talk about these leaks a bit because there's still more I want to cover before I move on to the next topics. I want to talk about Silent Hill 2. Some people are like throwing a fit about Silent Hill 2 remake because of something that was said recently. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about this potential issue with the PS5 apparently standing up vertically. I wanted to talk about the PS5 shortage finally being over. My excitement is pretty, I'd say, evenly distributed across all of them. So we'll talk about all that stuff. Don't worry. At least I'll try to. And thank you, Kevin G, for becoming a member. Appreciate that, man. Welcome aboard. Greatness awaits. Thank you so much. I appreciate all the support from you guys. But just to finish going over this 4chan leak real quick. So, again, one of the things they mention here that a lot of people were like, yo, hold on. The leak mentions that the IPs that are being revived on PS5 is Killzone for VR. And some people were asking, they're like, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. Like, why would Sony just develop a PSVR 2 exclusive Killzone and not make like a regular Killzone game for PS5 that is compatible with PSVR 2? And actually, I think that would make the most sense. It would be really strange if Sony decided that the way Killzone is going to return is an exclusive PSVR 2 game. Because if you think about the concept of that game and the way it would work, I don't see any reason why it couldn't just work normally. Kevin G, you're saying my favorite YouTuber, so I had to join. Well, thank you so much for that, man. I'm flattered. I really appreciate that, dude. But yeah, I don't see any reason why Sony wouldn't just create a proper Killzone game that is also compatible with PSVR 2. So that would be really cool. I would love to see Killzone return. Dude, I gotta say, hold on for a second now. This is interesting because there was a rumor. I just remembered this. And I think this is significant. This may actually lend credence to this leak, this 4chan leak a little bit. There was a rumor that I think came from, before I say their name, I want to double check. I want to double check before I say their name because they're credible. Yeah, here we go. This was a while ago. This was in May of 2022. Rumor, Killzone VR in development for PlayStation VR 2. This came from Brian Paul, aka PSVR Without Parole. Now he is a very good source. He is a very reliable source for specifically all things related to PSVR. And this is what he said. He said that this is something that he heard was in development. Now apparently, it says that Killzone VR is described to have begun as a game for the original PSVR made by Supermassive Games. Supermassive had just wrapped up a series for PSVR games, including Until Dawn Rush of Blood. Sony had also apparently contracted Supermassive to make Killzone VR during these years, building off its experience with both the PSVR headset and remastering Killzone for the PS3. Unfortunately, by 2019, Sony was unhappy with the project and canceled it. Paul says that while Supermassive's development Killzone VR was ended, Sony did not abandon this project. It instead shifted development of Killzone VR internally. That's where Paul's confidence in what's happened ends and where he begins to speculate. He goes on to say that if internal development of Killzone VR started in 2019, it's possible that the project could be planned as a launch title, which right now we know that's not true. But this is interesting because, dude, we were hearing about this PSVR Killzone game way back in May of last year, and now this leak pops up with a bunch of stuff reportedly revealing PlayStation's plans, and that's one of the things that's listed here. Interesting. Very interesting. So one last thing I want to mention before going on here is there is I've mentioned it quite a few different times on the podcast and on the channel, but there is a second team at Guerrilla Games that's been working on a AAA game since 2018. And Simon LaRouche is an important name to pay attention to because he used to be the head of Rainbow Six Siege. He was, I think, the design lead or something along those lines. He was like the head guy who made Rainbow Six Siege and was in charge of it. And in 2018, he moved to PlayStation, specifically Guerrilla Games, and he was tasked with making a new game. And this game has been in development since 2018. Now, we have heard, and it's been confirmed, that Guerrilla Games is working on a multiplayer component of Horizon. But now I'm beginning to wonder because, like, we've speculated for a long time, given this developer, Simon LaRouche, given his expertise in, tactical competitive shooter like Rainbow Six. I don't know how well that would translate to, hey, we're going to make you the guy in charge of making our Horizon game. They seemed very different. And we speculated for a long time that, clearly this means that Guerrilla Games, the second team, is working on Killzone or maybe a SOCOM reboot of some kind of shooter. We haven't heard anything about that. And so I'm almost wondering, like, could it be a Killzone game? Like, could this be just a full-blown AAA Killzone game that's going to mainly be marketed on PSVR 2, but can also be played on PS5? Because that game is ripe to be a live service title for Sony. I don't know, but then you have to think how thin is Guerrilla stretching themselves at this point? Can they really be working on a Horizon 3, a Horizon multiplayer game, and a Killzone game? I don't know, man. I don't know. Sony has a lot of support studios these days, though. That's for sure. So, yeah, and Call of the Mountain. But I guess that game's finished at this point, and Fire Sprite was helping with Call of the Mountain. So, you really got to wonder how much Guerrilla actually worked on Call of the Mountain as well. Not to be rude, but I'm only saying that because it's like, I feel like Fire Sprite, if I had to guess, did the majority of the heavy lifting for Call of the Mountain, and Guerrilla helped maybe a little bit, but they really wanted to make sure the Guerrilla Games name was attached to it. Oh, God. So, really interesting. I just pieced that together right now. I'm not saying that means that this leak is, I'm not saying this leak is legitimate now, but I think that definitely adds something to it. Paradise Decay says, MBG, I've heard Killzone VR now from 2 different sources, including the one you featured. It would be awesome, man. I would see. That's the thing that's going to get me into VR too heavily. A proper competitive shooter. That's going to get me into it. Like, that's why that game Firewall Ultra, I'm excited to see more of that. And a Killzone game would, oh yeah. I love Horizon. I think Horizon Call of the Mountain looks great. Don't get me wrong, but playing some kind of shooter, I think, is really what's appealing to me for VR. Look, I want to also mention something else that was brought up here that I think is really interesting. And a lot of people were like looking at this like, yo, no way if this is true. Apparently, one of the IPs that's being revived, according to this leak, there's MotorStorm. That sounds extremely believable. Okay. I've said before that Sony needs to have a competitor to Forza Horizon. Obviously, they have a competitor to Forza, that being Gran Turismo, but they need something that's more arcadey. MotorStorm. They're bringing back Ape Escape, but PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. That's right. According to this leak, PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale is something that Sony's working on. Now, there's a couple things here. Number one, how many of you guys played God of War Ragnarok and heard the reference? Kratos referenced PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. Pretty funny. I'm not saying that necessarily adds anything to it, but it definitely got people thinking of the game again. However, the one thing that makes me actually believe this could be real, hear me out. Hear me out here, okay? I know he was in the original PlayStation All-Stars. Hear me out. We need to take a look at what Sony is doing with the PlayStation brand in 2023. Okay? The main thing that Sony is trying to achieve with PlayStation that they haven't really tried to do before is much wider exposure. They want people who are not that involved with gaming or just very, very casually involved with gaming. They want them to know about The Last of Us, about God of War, about Horizon, eventually about Ghost of Tsushima, about Gran Turismo. They want people to know about this stuff, people who don't know. And when you think about a game like PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale, the number one thing it has going for it is the exact thing that Super Smash Bros. Has going for it. It's a mascot fighter, you know, and it just makes too much sense for Sony to do this, in my opinion. I'm not saying they could do it well. Hopefully they could, but I just feel like Sony, I could see them greenlighting this game in 2023. I could see this game being in development. And that's true. They own Evo as well. That's very important to highlight as well. They own Evo. There's a lot here working in the favor of those who are hoping for a return of PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. There's a lot working in your favor right now. So, one thing I want to point out about this leak that's scaring me a little bit, though, no Metal Gear mentioned. Although most of the focus has to do with PlayStation Studios. They also didn't mention Twisted. You know what? Actually, yeah, there's no mention of Twisted Metal either. That's a little bit peculiar. So here's another one I want to talk to you guys about. Somebody asked me, what was it? Subtext had asked me, what topics am I most excited to talk about? So something that comes up on this leak, The Last of Us multiplayer. The Last of Us multiplayer. So they say here, sorry, I might have to get really close to the mic, guys. I want to apologize if I talk really low. I cannot help it right now. But the leak says Naughty Dog will reveal a PS5 port of The Last of Us 2. So what do we think about that? I think that's, yep, of course they're going to at some point. Then they say a new Uncharted game that is both a sequel to Uncharted 4 and a soft reboot to the series that they are offering support development of. So Naughty Dog is offering support development for this Uncharted game. The primary developers are Malaysia Studio and Visual Art Studio. This is 100% believable. This is 100% believable because we have went over numerous job listings that basically say like, yep, this is we're working on a beloved IP, in collaboration with Naughty Dog. I believe that 100%. Now they say here the release of The Last of Us multiplayer is set for summer/fall of 2023. And then finally they say a new IP set in an open world fantasy. An open world fantasy game, new IP from Naughty Dog. So, first off, I believe that. I know people talk about The Last of Us Part 3, and I think we're going to get The Last of Us Part 3 eventually, but I'm pretty sure, I feel like we're going to get a new IP first. Now, let's talk about this Last of Us multiplayer game. To me, this is incredibly exciting, and I want it to be true. The idea that this Last of Us multiplayer game is going to drop before the end of this year. Some people might not believe that. Some people might think, dude, No way. We haven't even seen a single piece of footage of this Last of Us game, multiplayer game. We're supposed to believe it's going to release this year. Well, let me give you a couple reasons why I think this is actually going to happen. Oh, and it's also worth noting, we did get a new piece of concept art for The Last of Us multiplayer, and I think it gives us a better idea of the scale of this game, okay? So, a couple reasons why I think this is going to happen. Number one, officially, Naughty Dog just confirmed this past week, the reveal of this game is coming this year, okay? The reveal of this Last of Us multiplayer game is happening this year. Not that surprising, but reassuring. Number two, this game is most likely going to be free to play. The reason why I say this is because, well, it was discovered in a job listing that when referencing The Last of Us multiplayer, they mentioned free to play. Now, that obviously doesn't necessarily confirm it, but it certainly seems to lend credence to the idea that this is going to be a free to play game. Number three. Well, actually, continuing to talk about it being free to play, I also want to say Sony, as I've explained to everybody previously, they want at least one, ideally some of their upcoming live service games to be some of the most popular in the world. Like, Sony wants to hit the jackpot, similar to other publishers and other developers with games that are some of the most played games in the world right now. This is what Sony's hoping to achieve. And I think that they are smart enough to know that the only way you're going to give yourself a real shot at doing that is by making the game free to play. And it's going to release on PC day and date. The only question I really have about this Last of Us game that I am very unsure of is if it's going to be on PS4 as well. That's the big question I have. I want to say it won't, but it might. It might, especially if it's free to play. So the fact that it's going to be free to play means that it'll be a lot easier to release the game. Like, there will not have to be as, I don't want to say as big of a marketing buildup, but it's like it's much easier to get people in the door because it'll be free to play. Like, Sony's not going to have to worry about selling people on pay $70 for this. We also have looked, number three, we have looked at how Sony has handled their marketing cycles recently, and Sony has no problem, announcing a game basically 3 months before it launches. We've seen that. But even if a game is announced, Sony really won't begin to heavily market it until, it's basically a month or two out from launch. I mean, just look at what they did with God of War Ragnarok. People were complaining for literally months, right? That they're not talking about it. What's going on? It's going to get delayed the next year. And then boom, they went from 0 to 100, just like that. Some other factors I want to point out here is 2023. I've noticed it seems to be missing a little bit from Sony. What I'm trying to say is there is wiggle room for Sony to announce more games that are coming out this year. And I have no doubt, well, yeah, I don't know why I said that. It was confirmed. It is confirmed, I should say, obviously, that Spider-Man 2 is the big fall game for PlayStation. But I would not be surprised at all if The Last of Us multiplayer is right up there with Spider-Man 2. I'm not saying it's going to release at the same time, but I think, I could see The Last of Us multiplayer releasing in September of this year, free to play, drops on PS5 and PC, and then Spider-Man 2 in November. I could definitely see that happening. New Soul 9. You're saying, MBG, I agreed with you. Xbox needs to deliver this year because all the last investment they made since 2017 should realistically be done by now. It's been hell for us Xbox fans because I own both Xbox and PS5. Yeah, dude. I mean, that's what I mean. I agree. I agree. Xbox has made some They've been investing in the brand and in studios and in games since 2017. Billions and billions of dollars of investment. It's been years, man. It's been years. Microsoft. Well, Sony is going to have a big 2023. Microsoft has to have, in my opinion, an even bigger 2023. I believe that. I know it's some people it's a crazy statement, but I believe it. Microsoft has to make up for a lot of lost ground, man. So I hope they can deliver this year, dude. For the sake of all Xbox fans, really. And for the sake of competition, for real. I want to see Microsoft put some damn pressure on Sony. I do. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Sony's been sucking or anything like that. I'm not saying that Sony's been overly like this isn't PS3 era Sony by any means, but at the same time, I'm not opposed to Sony basically beginning to sweat a little bit and think, we got to step on the gas. We got to get people more excited, Like, I want to see that. And I feel like the only way that's going to happen is by Microsoft stealing some of the attention. It's just the way it works. Saying Sony is a bit too confident, I can agree with that. Yeah. I don't mind the confidence. I like the confidence, but I don't know, man. I don't know. Oh, sorry, guys. Hold on. Let me see. Himanshu Yadav, you're saying MBG, would you trade Spider-Man 2 for Half-Life 3? That's a tough one. I mean, I feel like it would be my responsibility to do so. I would have to, just for all of gaming. That would be like a necessary sacrifice, But even then, I don't know. That just it's impossible. Impossible. Somebody says so painful, but yes, yeah. I would be if I had to make that decision and I said, no, I'm going to keep Spider-Man 2. Oh my God. I'd be the most hated man in gaming. So don't want that to happen. But yeah, guys, talking about The Last of Us multiplayer, I'm telling you right now, if there's any game that I might make a second channel for, it's that. It's like I'm so confident in this game. I really am. And I'm telling you, like, I really think that Sony is going to have potentially a big hit game on their hands with The Last of Us multiplayer. I really do. And I'm excited, man. To be frank, I'm very excited to see a lot of Sony's multiplayer games. I get it, man. I get it. I get that people have a lot of trepidation. I understand. I'm maybe I'm being a little bit overly confident, but I've told you guys, I said at the beginning of this podcast, I get addicted to some of these really high quality live service multiplayer games, and I see the appeal. I do. The most important thing about a live service game is the gameplay has to be there, and it has to be phenomenal. That's why I'm so excited about The Last of Us multiplayer. There's one other point I wanted to bring up really quickly, though, as to why I believe this Last of Us multiplayer game could very well release this year. Assuming it's going to be free to play and understanding it is going to be a live service title, this means that Sony, specifically Naughty Dog, is going to continue to update this game and release new content for it, probably on a monthly or bi-monthly basis. This game is going to continually be fed new content. That's the point of a live service game. There's going to be constant events, new stuff added. I won't even be surprised if new stuff is added on a nearly weekly basis, okay? All of the most successful live service games, this is what they do, and they do this because it's been proven this is what keeps people sticky to the game. This is what keeps people coming back to the game week over week, month over month, year over year. So what this also means, and I'm not saying this in a bad way. I know how some people might take this, so hear me out. Naughty Dog, if this game is free to play, will have the benefit, the luxury, we could even call it, I'm sure it's seen as a luxury in game development, to not have to worry about having the same amount of content that would be needed for a full price game. Now, don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying this means it's going to have bare bones content or no content. No, I don't think that's the case at all. I think if you look at how long this game has been in development, you can certainly tell there's going to be a lot there. But there isn't that pressure where it's like, we need X amount of this. It'll be more forgivable because it's free to play. And also with the promise of, this is the launch, this is the base game, and we're going to be bringing new content weekly, monthly. This to me is a big sign that, yeah, this game could definitely drop this year. And I'm hoping it does because, man, I cannot wait for it. Easy E, you're saying the new leak of Sony's sci-fi RPG Source Push Square. Yeah, we did talk about that. We did talk about that earlier. I don't know if you may have missed it, but sci-fi RPG from Sony supposedly leaked. Yeah, we'll see, man. I'm wondering if that's a game that could be announced this year. I think it could, if it's been in development as long as some are claiming. But I want to move to another topic now. I don't want to keep going on about this leak. We'll see if this leak turns out to be true. I'm going to try to remember. I don't know if I'm going to be able to. I'll probably forget. But like 3-4 months from now, I want to look back to this leak and see if any of this stuff came true. Because the thing is, there's so much information in this leak that if we start to if by the time we get to like May or June, we come back to this and it's like, dude, 2 or 3 or even 4 things on this leak have been announced and come true, this might be something we could continue to refer to then, which is interesting. To me, that's why I'm always so interested in these bulk leaks where it's just all this stuff. And, you always assume there's no way it's real, it's fake, it's made up. But, it's like, if it does happen to be true, you could refer to it for quite some time. So, by the way, guys, please hit that like button for me. Hit that like button for me. Let's see if we can get up to 300 likes. The next topic I want to move on to here, I want to talk about the PlayStation 5 shortage. Finally, no, actually, I'm going to do that one next. I want to talk about this, the reports that are going around that there's a fatal flaw in the PS5. So for those who are out of the loop or, who need a refresher, apparently it's being reported, it's unverified, and it's not coming from Sony, that if you stand your PlayStation 5 console up vertically, okay, that this could potentially permanently damage your console. It has something to do with the liquid metal cooling and how it could, there's been spillage and stuff. And I admit, I think I went a little bit too hard with my video title and thumbnail. And a lot of people were basically like, dude, it's not all that. Like it's not. This could very well be like a very 1 to 2%, of people, probably even less than that, probably significantly less than that. And people are like jumping to conclusions, assuming that, this is why this is happening. And like, I guess the reason why I don't believe it, I'm willing to maybe like reserve some judgment and say, well, you never know what could happen. It's simply that, like, I just have a hard time believing that Sony's engineers would be able to screw up to that degree. You know what I mean? Like, these are people who are professionals. They have a lot of pressure to make sure that they don't miss something pretty obvious like that. Because this is a console that's going to sell tens of millions of units. And yeah, I just find that hard to believe. But it's understandable why people can read those reports and they might just think, well, screw that. I'm not taking any chances. I'm just gonna, you know, I'm gonna turn my console horizontal. Now my PS5 is already horizontal. It has to be for where I play. But I don't think I would be too worried about putting it vertically. My console was vertical many times before, and I've seen a lot of people saying that they have been using the PS5 for over 2 years straight now, probably very heavily, and it's been vertical and it's fine. I've also seen some people saying how apparently I don't know if this is true or not, but like I read some people were saying that basically if you use the PS5 without its actual stand, like the black stand that it comes with, you can damage it that way. Like it's supposed to be on that stand, which I guess sounds believable. Yeah. But they were saying like these reports that we're getting about the liquid metal leaking out and stuff, like we don't know what these people were doing with their consoles. We don't know how they were treating their consoles. We don't know anything, right? And that's the biggest thing here is I feel like if this was actually a real problem, we'd be hearing a lot more about it. Because here's the thing, man. It's one of two things. It's either we have individuals who work at these repair shops and they know something we don't, and they're basically trying to warn everybody. And in the next year, 2 years, we're going to start to see PlayStation 5s dropping like flies. Or they just happen to, these are people who are seeing somewhat extreme cases and they're making the assumption or maybe, seeing certain things that lead them to believe that this is going to be a widespread problem and they're just wrong. And when I think about what's more likely, is it more likely that these individuals who are encountering this, which it's very few, and it's not, again, it's not something that we've been hearing much at all. Is it more likely that there's just a few individuals that are maybe trying, I don't want to say they're trying to blow it up into a bigger thing. Like I'm trying to give people the benefit of the doubt here. Do I trust them or do I trust Sony's engineers? And I'm going to say, frankly, like I trust Sony's engineers, like I'm not really, I'm not sitting here being like, oh man, I think they really screwed up with the way they engineered this console. And they're false advertising by keeping or showing the console upright vertically. That sounds ridiculous to me. Sounds pretty ridiculous to me. But man, could you imagine the vindication? Could you imagine the vindication if like a year and a half from now, basically there's a new Red Ring of Death scenario, except it's I don't know what would be called the gray metal. I don't even know. I'm sure somebody in the chat could actually come up with something funny. I am not capable of doing so right now, but your console terminates itself. I don't know. I mean, look. I'm gonna be honest and say, like, hey man, hopefully nothing happens, but I will say that my PS5 has been okay, man. And believe me, I use my PS5 a lot. I've been using it a lot since launch, and it still works great, man. It still works great. So I don't really have all too much to say about this topic, quite frankly, because, it was concerning to see the reports coming out, and I figured I would talk about it in a video just in case. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not worried about it. I'm not. So that's pretty much it for that topic. You guys let me know what you think about it. Something else I wanted to mention, talking about Naughty Dog. But first, we have the 1B22000 saying the sample size is less than 20 consoles after 2 years from this YouTube repair shop. Their exact words. Okay, I didn't even know that. Well, there we go. That's not a lot. I mean, that's not a lot, dude. I mean, I think maybe the implication is that it's 20 now, but maybe it'll be like 2,000 by 2025. No, I'm not worried about it, dude. I'm not worried about it at all. The one thing I do want to know is how long the PS5 is expected to last, generally speaking. Like, how's the PS5 going to run 8 years in? How's it going to run 10 years in? What are some of the first problems that people could run into over the long term? Because obviously these things are not meant to last forever. So I'm curious to see that. Curious to see how that works out. Guessing till 2027. Yeah, that would be probably about when another generation starts. Around that time. Drip of Doom. I like that one. There we go. That's the one. If this ever does become a thing, we're gonna name it the Drip of Doom. Perfect. Miami Sunrise coming in with the so if like in the next year or two we see like a Xbox 360 Red Ring of Death, like 50% fail rate for all PS5s, we're gonna call it the Drip of Doom. Okay. I love that. All right. Moving on to the next topic here. I just want to see what you guys have to say about this. I don't know that I'm going to talk about it very long, but in just a couple of days now, we have the Last of Us HBO premiering. The first question I will ask the chat: how many of you are going to be watching the Last of Us HBO series? How many of you are excited for it? Me personally, I was excited for it. I was mostly excited for it, and then I read something and it made me less excited, like somewhat, just being truthful. So everything I'm seeing of it looks really good so far. The one thing that I read recently, though, it's January 15th, I think. No, not the tendril thing. So yeah, apparently one of the changes they made, you're saying the spore change is dumb. One of the things that they apparently changed in The Last of Us HBO is that there aren't really going to be spores. Instead, they're going to be tendrils. I feel like that, I don't know. I mean, maybe that makes sense. I feel like maybe the idea of trying to make a realistic, grounded show like that, but like something's airborne. I don't know. In the trailer, you see Bill with the gas mask. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's going to be something there, right? But the thing that really dropped my excitement for the Last of Us HBO show is when Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin pretty much confirmed that, yeah, if we get a season 2, we're going to follow the entirety of the second game. And this really, I don't know, man, that I guess as somebody who didn't enjoy the sequel story, I'm just like, damn it. I'm disappointed because I guess what my hope was is they had Pedro Pascal as Joel, and this show is being given a massive budget. Pedro Pascal, I think at this point it's safe to say he's a A-list actor, right? Um, I guess I was like, and they still could. They still could. I mean, that's the thing is like, one thing that apparently Neil Druckmann confirmed is that they're making some, what they're calling it, some radical changes to some of the story. And we don't know what those changes are going to be. And so if they decide to, basically with season 2 cover the second game, they could also make even more radical changes with that. I was honestly under the assumption that because Sony and Naughty Dog have basically been ignoring The Last of Us 2, like they have just been ignoring this game. They have not talked about it. All of the focus has been on Joel and Ellie. All of the focus has been on the first Last of Us. I get it. I guess I almost just kind of thought to myself, oh, like I'm not saying they're going to like pretend Last of Us Part 2 never happened, but I almost just kind of thought like maybe they can do something literally completely different with, a second season of The Last of Us. Almost like instead of the second game, here's a whole nother story of what could have happened. I actually thought that they were going to do something like that. But now that they said that they would follow the second game, I don't know, man. I don't know. The moment Abby gets cast in season 2 of The Last of Us HBO, I think that's when I'm dipping. I think that's when I'm like, well, peace. It was nice, but I'm I'm head out now. Oh man. I see people get really defensive. People get overly defensive, and I think they need to calm down. Like, people get really upset. Like, I noticed that about Last of Us 2 fans. Like, if you say, I didn't like Abby and I didn't like the story, they get, like, they basically say, well, you just don't get it, man. It's like, no, I get it pretty well. It's not difficult to miss what The Last of Us 2 is trying to achieve, and some of it did well. Other stuff, no, in my opinion, it didn't. I didn't like Abby as a character. I didn't like anything about her section of the game. I couldn't stand it. I'm going to be honest. Like, I hated The Last of Us Part 2 because I had to play as Abby, and they, I just feel like they completely ruined Joel and Ellie to a degree. Maybe not Joel. I'll be honest. I think that the one thing about The Last of Us Part 2 is they actually turned Joel into an even better character. And I think people might be surprised to hear me say that, because people, I think, have always been under this assumption that, oh man, you're just so mad that they killed Joel. No, actually, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, initially it's like, holy wow, like that's a tough pill to swallow. And that's part of the second game for sure. But, I think that they did Joel justice in The Last of Us Part 2, believe it or not. I think they really screwed Ellie up. Like, I think they really screwed Ellie up, because Naughty Dog almost made Joel they really showed like a more tender side to him in a way in The Last of Us Part 2, to where they kind of like, they kind of showed you like, this is just true form Daddy Joel, right? Not so much a broken man anymore. And I think that, some of the end scenes of the game did that. But for me, it really was just, and I can even understand what they did with Ellie's character. Like, I feel like, I think even though I'm not saying I don't want to say that they ruined Ellie's character, but they definitely put her in a position by the end of that game where it's like, she redeemed a part of herself, but she also completely lost she paid the ultimate price due to what she did, what she chose to pursue. And it makes sense. But the one thing I just still can't get over when I think about The Last of Us 2, and it's why I'm like, damn, like I was really I don't know. I might still watch it. I just couldn't stand. I could not stand playing as Abby and playing any of her, like I just did not care about her as a character. The game tried so hard to make me care about her perspective, and I get it, but I just she's just, to me she was just a completely unlikable character. And stop being a child and play it again. I mean, I could play it again, I guess, if I really wanted to force myself, but I just didn't, I just think she was a poorly written character. I think Abby was a poorly written character that I like my whole thing with The Last of Us 2 is I always understood what Naughty Dog was trying to do. And I've always said, like, yeah, I give them credit. They tried to do something that almost seemed impossible. And to me, it kind of wasn't possible, where they're like, we're going to take two of the most beloved characters. We're going to brutally annihilate one of them. The other, we're going to make basically the bad guy. And then we're going to take the character that brutally annihilated one of those characters. We're going to try to make you like them and sympathize and empathize with them. It's like, oh, yeah, that's really ambitious, man. That's really tough to pull off. How are you going to do it? And I played the game, and everything. See, this is Julian in the chat. She's not poorly written, LMAO. You just hate her because she killed Joel. Joel deserved it. Don't kid yourself. Julian, I would like you to please explain to me why Abby is a well-written character, because I can give you a couple of examples if you really want why she's a poorly written character. I don't really want to go into that, though, because I'm not trying to turn the conversation into that necessarily. But would MBG feel better about Abby if she got a whole game of herself before Ellie and Abby's world collided? Well, I mean, yeah, you're talking about a whole nother game that would change things up quite dramatically, for sure. But let me see. Charlie says, tell me you didn't understand the story without telling me you didn't understand the story. Dude, I see all you guys criticizing me, but I don't see anybody explaining why, like, what made it. Please, I'm open to conversation. I want to know what did you think was so good about it? Like, what was the story about in your opinion? Because I feel like I understood the story quite well, Abby is a great written character who had to deal with trauma just like Joel. I see what he's saying. Stand on it, MBG. Dude, I'll tell you right now, man. Like, dude, The Last of Us 2 is that is a game you'll never see me change my opinion on that game. That's just the truth, man. And I'm not trying to be confrontational. That's the thing. I just see people in the chat are coming at me. Some Abby stands out here, and that's fine. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong if you love The Last of Us 2 or if you think it's a great game. I'm open to hearing. I'm just open to hearing, like, what exactly. Like, let me ask you this. Abby is a character. What did you like about her? Like, what in your mind made her a likable character? I'm genuinely interested to hear that. Lock PSB, you're saying I want Naughty Dog to make The Last of Abby. Well, I speculated that if the Last of Us Part 3 happens, I don't see any reason why Abby wouldn't be in it. Neon, you're saying her drive. Okay, I could see that. Yeah. Abby definitely had that aggressive drive. For sure. The Last of Us 2 is about consequences of revenge, loss and loneliness, perspective, and the importance and challenge of forgiveness. Yeah, I agree. LOL. It's great as a piece of fiction. It divides opinions. It affects people. They did a great job. That's what entertainment is. I've always said that, man. I've always said that Naughty Dog did something right. They must have done something right that people like myself and many others, you still talk about it. Abby was unreasonable and annoying. So I'll tell you right now, I feel like for me, what I didn't like about Abby's character more than anything, it's not like I could understand why she killed Joel. I could understand actually why she did all the things she did. What really bothered me the most is the fact that Naughty Dog did not, in my opinion, there was no point in that game where I felt sorry for Abby, where I felt like, damn, or like, man, I really feel for this character in the same way that I felt for Joel or that I feel for Ellie. I just didn't. And the thing that bothered me the most is how hard, like on the nose, dude, like Neil Druckmann tried so hard to do everything in his power to be like, well, do you feel bad for her now? Do you like, look at how bad Ellie is now. Ellie just killed a pregnant woman and she killed her dog. Oh, damn. So, and I'm just like, yeah, no, I just feel like, you're just trying everything in the book. You're trying every possible thing you can to make me look at Abby as the good guy. Right? But I don't know. I'm sure there are other examples, but yeah, it is. It is interesting to think they did show Abby though. They did break Abby. That's the one thing that I will say was good. The ending of the Last of Us Part 2. One thing that I don't necessarily agree with everybody on, not everybody, but one of the biggest criticisms I remember during the conversation when that game came out, I was like, a lot of people were saying like, dude, how could Ellie not kill Abby? How could Ellie let Abby go? And to me, that like the ending in that way never really bothered me. I'll be honest, the ending of the game itself never actually bothered me that much. I always kind of felt like, man, that game was a bit of a drag to play through. I don't feel very good, and I guess that's the point. You're not supposed to feel good. But to me, the ending, they showed both Ellie and Abby completely broken. And, I think that's probably the best they could have done in that regard. And then they have obviously the conversation between Joel and Ellie, and Joel's like, oh, I do it all again. And so the ending was, it wasn't that bad. But for me, it really was almost like everything that happens in between. But yeah, we'll see. I'm so curious to see what Naughty Dog does next. I gotta admit, no matter what Naughty Dog does next, I'm gonna be interested in from a story perspective. So like if they do a Last of Us Part 3, I'm gonna be interested because I want to know like where are you guys gonna go from here? Like the curiosity is through the roof, where it's like, I feel like the worst has to be over with The Last of Us Part 2 and like the first, obviously what happened with Joel in that game. Okay, like that, there's nothing you could throw my way now that could shock me any further, So I would just be really curious to see, assuming the third game would be the final one, like how they would wrap it up. But I'm also just as interested if Naughty Dog decides to do a new IP like we've talked about. I want to know, like, what's that going to be like? So, all right. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know how I got on that side tangent, but I'm going to move on. I just simply wanted to say that I was extremely excited for The Last of Us HBO, and I think it looks really good. I'm still going to watch it, but I don't know. I'm going to be so hesitant when they announce a season 2 and they're like, you guys ready? you guys ready for season 2? You ready for Abby? And I'm like, oh, Who should they get to play Abby? It's Abby. It's Abby time. The Rock. No, bro. You're going too far now. The Rock. They should get they could get the chick who I don't know her name, but the person that actually they won't though. You know, they won't do that. Tom Holland. Tom Holland is Abby. That's funny. That is funny, dude. Brie Larson. Oh my God. Why could I see that happening? Why? Yes, Brie Larson would be perfect as Abby. There we go. Giga Chad. Nah, I mean, Ronda Rousey? Yeah, I could see her as Abby. RU46N2 Ray, member for 17 months, saying, Part 3, Joel's OG daughter comes back and was not dead and wants Ellie's blood for not saving Joel and Abby because she killed her dad, calling it. I think you're on to something, Ray. I think you're on to something there. For sure. All right. We're going to move on here because this is getting out of hand. Something else we can talk about. Now, hold on. I got to bring this up. I actually have to pull this up. Give me a second. Okay, so I saw some people making a big deal out of what we're about to read right now, and I wanted to talk about it because I did see somebody in my comments. I think it was my last video or the one before that. They were like saying, "Oh, I wonder if MBG is going to talk about Bloober Team and how they're going to change the game to match modern audiences or contemporary audiences," which these are dreaded words to a lot of people. And so I wanted to cover this and give my thoughts on it because I actually missed this. I've seen a lot of different topics come out about Bloober Team and Silent Hill 2, but Saul Goodman says the channel that bashes great games. Dude, see, this is what's frustrating to me, man. Like, even over 2 years later, 3 years almost at this point, you still can't talk about The Last of Us Part 2 without it turning into you have to pick a side. That's frustrating to me, man. Like, if somebody says, "Oh, I didn't like this particular game because I didn't like the story," and somebody else says, "No, I think it's a great game." Like, I don't know, man. I just don't know why it has to be that divisive. Like, it's not that big of a deal, It's not. Although I will admit, final thing I'll say before we move on, I will admit, I think it is one of those games and one of those stories where it kind of makes you pick a side. I will admit that. It's like the game doesn't really allow you to just stand in the middle. It doesn't. So, anyway, Easy E says Abby is a trash character, and so is Part 2 story. Full stop. Well, Easy E making it clear, bro. Making it clear his thoughts. Here's a question. I think this is a funny question to pose because I have to imagine there are at least some people here who hate Xbox and also hate The Last of Us Part 2. Which one do you hate more? Which one do you... one goes, one stays. Maybe not one goes, one stays, but between the two, which one? Is it... Which one gets under your skin more, Xbox or The Last of Us Part 2? Space Gambler Jr. says The Last of Us 2. Victoria says Xbox. Euphoria says Part 2. Neither. Yo, that's surprising. I'm actually seeing more people saying Part 2 than Aaron says Phil Spencer. Jeez. I don't know. I was just curious to see. because you could tell, man. There's like some passionate hatred for some things out there. What do I want from Factions 2? What I want from Factions 2, dude, I want The Last of Us Factions to be like a somewhat open world, like I want it to be a lot like The Division 2. I want it to have great PvP as well. I want to go on missions. I want there to be a lot of co-op. I want there to be a lot of customization, leveling up. I want it all. I want the whole thing. That's what I'm hoping for. Somebody says, why would I spend energy hating something? If you don't like it, just move on. Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I hear you. All right, let me read some of this article real quick. Because again, I saw people making a big deal out of this. So we have the chief marketing officer of a Blooper Team talking about Silent Hill 2 remake. And let me see. I'm trying to find the part here. So the fact that we're developing a Silent Hill game is an honor and a dream come true. Silent Hill 2 is a classic that shaped how our studio works on psychological horrors. The idea of working on this project stalked us for many years. That's an interesting way to to phrase that. And in 2019, we received an invitation from Konami to participate at the Tokyo Game Show. To our delight, Konami asked us to prepare a concept for a remake of the original game's second installment in exchange for the opportunity of bringing the concept to life. While she couldn't give more details due to the game still being in the middle of development, she did talk up their approach to recreating the classic horror game. She says, longtime fans shouldn't worry about us missing the point while we're living up to the title, or while we're livening up the title. Sorry. We faithfully stick to the traditional story canon while remaking the gameplay and updating the graphics from the ground up. She continues, as you see, we're not straying away from the original concept of making this cult classic. We just have some ideas on how to make the peculiar scare factors more appealing to the contemporary audience. So far, the changes made for the contemporary audience primarily seem to be targeted towards gameplay. Okay, that's the thing. That's the thing that I want to really highlight here. It says here, instead of the fixed camera angles seen on the original Silent Hill 2, the game will be more akin to Resident Evil remakes with an over-the-shoulder view instead. Combat is also overhauled, which could be a concern as there was a reason for the jankiness in the original beyond just hardware limitations. When it comes to story elements, she wouldn't say... She apparently wanted to keep that a secret, like the famous Pyramid Head kitchen scene, though she does say Blooper Team are taking a safe approach to any changes and that they'll apply adjustments to certain areas that need modernizing due to the passage of time. So, this is something that I feel like people are maybe blowing a little bit out of proportion. Like, I'm not coming to the defense of Blooper Team because in my opinion, they have something to prove with this game. However, I will say this, if Blooper Team screws this up, I will be shaking my head so hard because it's like, how do you do that? How do you screw it up? I feel like you can't. Now, what I'm taking away from this is when she says, we're not straying away from the original concept. We have ideas on how to make the peculiar scare factors more appealing to the contemporary audience. I feel like this can be concerning for a few reasons. Like, I'm not going to jump to conclusions. I'm not going to jump to the conclusion that, well, there you go. They ruined it. It's over. They went woke and the whole thing. Like, I'm not going to go off the deep end because I don't know. We have to see it. I feel like when the thing that pops into my head is, I hope what you mean is, I'm going to be honest, there's only one thing that pops into my head. I'll be interested to see what you guys have to say, like what you make, how you interpret this. The way I interpret this is I feel like when they talk about contemporary audiences, the thing that pops into my mind is they want it to be scarier than it actually is. Because the flavor of horror that Silent Hill delivers, in my opinion, is very scary. If you actually understand the concept of Silent Hill and what the game is really trying to reveal, like the deep-rooted psyche of a human being, of human beings, and yeah, that's my fears. I don't want them to dumb it down. Like I think they. I think that's what they're. I don't know. I think they want to make the game more traditionally scary. Like, for example, when you think of, like, I don't know, when I think of Silent Hill, I don't think of like jump scares, right? I don't think of like constantly having stuff, pop out at me suddenly. There's something about Silent Hill. It's like a slow burn. It's got this just kind of underlying, unsettling, horrific nature to it that I feel like the one way Blooper Team could screw this up by trying to modernize it is I hope they don't feel like, man, we have to add a little bit more scare factor here. Like, if it depends on what they mean by that. If them adding to the scare factor means really like, how do we make the tone just even more dreadful? Like, how do we really liven up this environment? And when I say liven up, I actually mean make it even more disturbing looking. How do we leverage the modern day tools and graphics to be able to really give an even greater sense of, doom and just depression and unsettling, like these are the words that to me come to mind when I think of Silent Hill. I don't know. I don't want them to do some dumb shit like where it's like, we're going to add like 5 more jump scares to this level because it just needs to be scarier for modern art, like, and that's the thing is they shouldn't have to make it much scarier because the thing that made Silent Hill scary, in my opinion, it is the atmosphere. It is the tone. Obviously, their creatures are scary. Some of the encounters are obviously very scary, but it's really just this constant feeling of suspense is a good way to put it. Just you feel very unsettled, very unsure, and almost confused, where you're like you don't really understand what's going on, and I feel like in a lot of ways, that's where, I like the fact that they're taking inspiration from Resident Evil 2 Remake. I do think that is good, but, one of the things the article does mention that I think is an agreement, like I don't want to, they're going to update the gameplay. They got to be careful with that because, yeah, it is true. Like some of the jankiness in the older Silent Hill games, it's not necessarily because of it was a product of its time. It's supposed to be that way. It's supposed to make you feel a certain way. You're not supposed, I don't expect it to feel as good, I guess. I don't want to say as good, but I think you guys understand what I'm saying. I worry because Bloober Team, this is an important game and I don't want to see them screw it up. Planet Schlorpian, you're saying if Sony theoretically did day and date releases on PC and it affected PS5 sales, that they'd immediately reverse course. Yeah, they would. The only Sony doing day and date releases of PS5 games, I'm telling you, like, there's a reason why they're not doing it with their single player games. Sony knows that they can get people to buy PS5s with their single player games. Everyone knows that. And they're not going to let that go. Not anytime soon. Sony also knows that the bulk of people who are going to go buy a console for a specific game are going to do so within the first year of it coming out. But yeah, if Sony started to drop more games day and date on the PC, and suddenly they start to look at the line and it's showing that, you know, sales are dropping to a noticeable degree, they would reverse course. I mean, I'm pretty sure they would, because it's more important. Sony sees more importance in still selling hardware than just being everywhere, at least as of right now. Oh, sorry guys, I need to hydrate here. Yeah, so Planet Slorpion, I think that I think Sony has a long way to go when it comes to day and date. I think we'll have to see how their approach with their live service games goes first, and then we'll see what happens then. But yeah, I think they would reverse course. Zagatka, you're saying, sad to say, but I saw the blooper trailer and saw a miss. I could write pages about why. If you know, you know. I mean, I'm curious to know what you're thinking of, Zagatka, because one of the things that I thought was funny about the blooper team Silent Hill trailer 2 trailer is, you know, obviously the famous scene of James goes into the bathroom and he's looking in the mirror, and you know, there's like a shadow effect. It's very dark. You can't see his eyes. It just look like black holes, you know, hollow. And, you know, a lot of people thought that, you know, that was like an artistic decision. They did that purposely. They like, you're not supposed to see his eyes. And there was also the speculation that he's actually looking at the player character. And it's so funny because like, one of the developers, I forget which one it was, but he came out and he was like, I think it was Akira Yamaoka. No, was it the I forget who it was, but one of them came out and they were like, I hate to break it to you guys, but he was never looking at the player character. And I don't know. I think that, yeah, it was you know that said that. I think the thing that I think people are having a hard some Silent Hill fans are having a difficult time with seeing Bloober Team remaking Silent Hill 2 is, if you look back at Silent Hill 2, there's something about the entirety of the game. Like, even the technology at the time adds to the disturbing nature of the game. Like, those cutscenes are still really amazing looking, but there's just something about them that doesn't look quite right. If you catch my drift, at least in my opinion. Like, when I see those Silent Hill 2 cutscenes, I'm like, these still hold up really well, but it's just the kind of the style of them. They look very creepy. And what we're seeing with the remake is basically, I want to say I hate to put it this way, but it's just true. It's just the truth. Silent Hill 2 remake is going to be less artistically driven. This remake is striving for a more realism, like a more realistic version that some people, I think, believe maybe just it doesn't match the tone. Like, it just doesn't add up for Silent Hill 2. You know what I mean? And I get that because I've rewatched this trailer numerous times, and I understand why people are like looking at James Sunderland's new facial expressions, and some of it's very pronounced and dramatic, and you could tell like they put a lot of importance in mocap. And I'm gonna be honest, I kind of like that though. I like that simply because it's like, it to me, if you're gonna remake a game like this, I don't know why you would. I don't know. I personally am looking forward to seeing how these new performances either add or take away from the game. I do think it's a little bit risky, but I've seen that trailer multiple times, and I like the way it looks, man. Like, I like this idea of seeing a more realistically, emotionally driven retelling of this story. Because I guess the way I look at it, as the original's always going to be there. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's literally nothing wrong with a person playing a remake and deciding, I like the original better. Good news. It's not ever going anywhere. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I guess at the same time, though, I would be curious to know from some people who were not so happy with the way Bloober Team has handled the remake or what they've seen so far. I would be curious to know, like, what would you have preferred? Would you have preferred a much more subtle performance from the actor who's playing James this time? Like, yeah, still doing the technology, still giving him the more realistic look and all the other characters, bringing them up, but a more subdued performance, a more subtle performance, maybe. Because that's one thing they were definitely trying to convey in the trailer is like, man, look at this close up of James's new facial expressions that he can pull off now, So I don't know. Shane Ramsey, you're a member for 26 months, man. Thank you. You're saying, good day, MBG. Thanks for the great content over the last 2+ years. Well, no problem, man. I'm glad you enjoy it. I'll keep going as long as I can. So thank you for that. And we have Zagatka again. You're saying, here's an easy one. This is classic, but his entire character glow up was a mistake. He looks so haggard, it's basically a spoiler. Ha. Huh. Okay. I get where you're coming from now. Yeah, without spoiling anything, because I have to imagine there are going to be quite a few people who have not experienced this game. Yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. And maybe that's what I was subconsciously alluding to is you do look at the original game and yeah. So I think it depends. It depends. I mean, I'm trying to imagine somebody who has never experienced Silent Hill 2 watching this trailer and trying to figure out where their mind might be after seeing it. Because you're mentioning a spoiler. I don't know that people are that good, I'd be surprised. Like if there are people who can watch, don't know anything about Silent Hill 2, like if there are people who don't know anything about Silent Hill 2 and they watch that Bloober Team trailer, if they could tell me, like, if they could basically tell me like, oh, I already know, I would be surprised. I would be like, that's kind of impressive. But I do understand what you're getting at because there is such an important, I don't want to say too much and it's hard to talk about, but there is such an important layer to this game that people, I guess, are fearful that with the new technology driving, as you're calling it, James's glow up, he's now much more expressive. Some people, I don't know, maybe for some people they might view it the other way where it adds more intrigue. Like, this man is clearly in the trailer shaken up and going through some stuff. I wonder why, and I think it could in a way ultimately detract from the twist, the build up. Because I mean, it's Silent Hill, guys. There's going to be some kind of twist, right? It's a horror game, but I don't know. Maybe I don't. It's tough, man. I gotta admit, I am nervous myself. I'm very excited, but I am a little bit nervous because this is one of those things where it's like, well, I don't know, man. Bloober Team. To me, this is make or break for them. It really is, and I'm at least glad that they're understanding. They're at least self-aware. One of the things that she says, people are afraid that they're going to miss the point of the game, And the fact that they're self-aware of like, oh, good, so you guys understand like this is a very psychologically driven game. Hopefully you don't screw that aspect up. I hope that means they won't. Zanarkhan Blitzer, thank you for the generous super chat, man. Part 1, you're saying, don't know if you talked about it yet, but where did the PS5 vertical fake hazard talk come from? Where's the source? I hope the topic doesn't go for weeks like the PS5 heatsink change by Nurse Austin Evans and his revised PS5 teardown. Yeah, that was stupid. Well, to answer part 1, we did talk about this earlier, and luckily we didn't talk about it long. And honestly, I don't plan to talk about it unless we like start to see more and more reports that like hundreds of people week over week are like reporting that their PS5s are breaking for some reason. I don't plan to cover it. That one video I made talking about it was all I planned to talk about. And apparently, from what I'm hearing and what people are telling me, the original source is apparently a YouTuber who owns a repair shop who claimed that they've encountered like 20 PS5s that had this issue. And I guess for some people, 20 PS5s out of like 30 million is somehow enough to warrant fear on this level. But yeah, dude, that was really stupid, man. Oh man, I totally forgot about that. Yeah, when Austin Evans talked about the heatsink change, yeah, you got to be careful with this stuff. That's the thing that bothers me a lot about stuff like this is at what point do people stop making it seem like Sony doesn't know what they're doing? You know what I mean? Like we're 5 generations in when it comes to console hardware. Why are people going to make it seem like this company doesn't know what they're doing? Now, do they make some mistakes at times? Yeah. And one of the biggest mistakes, in my opinion, that Sony's made in recent memory, and they learned from it very quickly, was the heat dissipation of the PS4 and the fans, and how it's ridiculous. Like that was ridiculous. I think how there are just so many PS4s. Even my PS4 Pro, sounds like a freaking jet engine. Something like that's not like make or break. Like, oh man, I can't even use this hardware now. They still, of course there are going to be some mistakes. No company's perfect. Engineers aren't perfect. But I just think it's absurd that people somehow still talk about Sony, as an electronic company, as a hardware company, and they make it just sound like they just don't know what they're doing. Like they're just totally incompetent and they're screwing up. What are they thinking? And it's like, I don't know. I don't feel that way about Sony at all. Your part 2 here says, with his cheap iPhone thermometer. Oh, okay. This was continuing to talk about Austin Evans' revised PS5 teardown. With his cheap iPhone thermometer medical equipment used on PS5. Then Dr. Gamer Nexus resolved the PS5 heatsink diagnosis. My PS5's been in the vertical position since launch day, no issues. Well, that's the thing, Zanarkhan. The amount of people that I have seen come out and basically say, like, I've been using my PS5 vertically since day one, and it's fine. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. We'll see, man. Let's come back. You know what? As long as there's no more reports coming out, let's come back to this if we can even remember a year from now. And let's ask. I'm going to ask my audience, how many of you guys can now say you've had your PS5 vertically stood for 3 years straight and it works fine? We'll check it each year. We'll see. So thank you so much for those generous super chats, Narcan Blitzer. I really appreciate that, bud. But yeah, when it comes to the Silent Hill topic, I don't have much more to say about it other than I'm still confident, guys. I gotta admit, like, some people might call me a fool for this, and putting too much faith in the Bloober team, but I liked the trailer. I liked what I've seen of it. I understand why not everybody's on board, but I'm excited for it. And frankly, I can't wait to see proper gameplay. I can't wait to see more of Silent Hill 2 Remake, and I hope it comes out this year. I'm excited to play it, man. So I hope Bloober team nails it. And if they don't, if Bloober team somehow screws this up, then that's it. I will forever look at them as a terrible studio, and I'll never give them my money. So, Let me see. We do have quite a few other topics, not quite a few, but some other topics to talk about here. What should we talk about next? Should we talk about the PS5 shortage being over? Or should we talk about a little bit about Resident Evil 4 Remake? I wanted to talk about this game. Maybe we should segue into Resident Evil 4 Remake because I learned something about this game that I never knew. Okay, and yeah, I'll just segue right into this. We learned something about Resident Evil 4 Remake, or I did, that I never knew. That it's being reported and confirmed that the island section is going to be in the game, in the remake. But apparently, the way this is being reported is this is a controversial section. This is a section that people don't like. And I'm just over here like, well, that's news to me. And I think it's weird because I'm almost thinking like, was that ever in question? Like, was it ever actually in question that a whole third of this game was not going to be included? Yeah, it seems like fake outrage. It does, because the island section to me is like, I don't know, like the best way I could explain this is I never once thought about Resident Evil 4 and thought, wow, I really wish this one section of the game didn't exist or was dramatically altered. I really don't feel that way about anything in Resident Evil 4. That doesn't mean that I'm not open to seeing changes made, as we can see with the gameplay we got of Resident Evil 4 Remake. They are changing things in some big ways, but I think the changes they're making like look incredible and make total sense. They don't look like they're cutting anything. They just look like they're doing what they're supposed to do, which is this is one of the best games ever made, and we need to really make every area look just blisteringly cutting edge, amazing. And I just think that's weird, man. Like, I love RE4. I mean, RE4 is one of my favorite games of all time. And one of the reasons I'm so excited about it is, dude, I can think back. I was so excited. If I'm not, my memory is pretty bad. Okay. I don't know why. It's pretty bad, but I'm pretty sure that RE4 Remake, or not RE4 Remake, Resident Evil 4 was a GameCube exclusive. And one thing I do remember is, I think it was at like summer camp or something. And I was reading this gaming magazine and I saw, and it was actually, it's funny because the magazines, when they were showing preview footage of Resident Evil 4, they were actually showing sections of the game that ended up getting either cut or completely reworked, where they were showing like, I remember there were certain aspects of RE4 that were supposed to have like ghosts or something like that. I don't know if I'm misremembering, but I swear that was a thing. And I just remember reading about this game and being so excited for it, where I was like, oh my God, dude. Yeah, the hook, man. There you go. Resident Evil 4 looks incredible. And I didn't have a GameCube. At the time, I only had a PS2, and I remember I had to beg my parents, I think, to convince them to buy me a freaking GameCube to play this game, because that's how excited I was for it. And I'll be honest, I cannot remember. I feel like I did ultimately get a GameCube, but it came after Resident Evil 4 finally released on PlayStation 2, because I don't remember ever playing RE4 on GameCube. What I do remember is playing it a crap ton on PS2. And I think that I pretty much was the person that had to wait. It went to PlayStation about a year later. I think that's exactly what happened. I ended up just having to wait to play it. And dude, it was one of my favorite games of all time. I loved it. I loved Resident Evil 4, and I played it so many times since. And I was always a little bit nervous about Capcom remaking it, but after they showed me the first trailer, I was immediately sold. I'm like, yep, they're going to nail it. You can just tell they know exactly what they're doing. And my God, it just got even better when they showed the first gameplay of RE4 Remake. So, when you talk about the first 6 months of PlayStation, man, I think RE4 Remake is at the top of my list. It really is. So, yeah, I can't say that I'm in agreement with anybody who's calling the island section of Resident Evil 4 controversial, truthfully. So, all right, let me see. I'm going to be honest, guys. I think I'm like running out of stuff to talk about here. So, one of the only topics that I have right now, well, actually, something I wanted to bring up, and this is going to be a very brief topic because I really don't have much to say about it, but some of you guys might have something to say about it. There was not a report, but actually Square Enix officially confirmed that they have a major Final Fantasy announcement to make this year, a new game announcement that's not related to Final Fantasy 16 and not related to Final Fantasy 7. And so the speculation right now, based on the famous NVIDIA leak, is that it's either going to be Final Fantasy 9 Remake or it's going to be Final Fantasy Tactics Remaster. And I already see in the chat, some people are thinking it's going to be Final Fantasy 9. Now, I'm not familiar with Final Fantasy 9, even a little bit. So I don't know, maybe you guys can tell me, is this a good game? Like, is this something I'm going to want to pay attention to? Because I was always somewhat familiar with Final Fantasy 7 just due to its popularity. And I mean, I played Final Fantasy 7 Remake, thought it was great, thought it was a amazing game, but I don't know, man. I just oh yeah, and that's another thing that Square Enix, apparently Square Enix's leadership are tripling down on blockchain and NFT, and it's like, what is wrong with you? What is wrong? Why would you do that? Why would you do that? But yeah, I do have to wonder about Final Fantasy 9. I'm trying to gauge how big of an announcement this is going to be, if that's what it actually is. If Square Enix, also, do we think it's going to be PlayStation exclusive? I mean, at this point, it has to be, right? It has to be. Right? I do have to wonder, though, like, how big of an announcement this is going to be. Because I'm just so unfamiliar with Final Fantasy. I don't know is this going to be on the same level as the announcement of a Final Fantasy 7 remake, or not quite on that same level. I see someone saying you would prefer Final Fantasy 8. Excuse me. Nothing will match it. Interesting. Well, I see somebody asking, can we expect any Bloodborne related news this year? I don't think so, man. I mean, I'm gonna be totally honest. I've given up on Bloodborne in the sense that I've given up on Sony talking about it anytime remotely soon. If it happened, that would be amazing. I'm sure Sony is aware. Of just how, how big and important Bloodborne is to the core PlayStation audience, but I don't think it's something that we're going to see anytime soon. I think it's much further down the road. Love to be wrong, though. I mean, you would think that is one game they would want to release for PC. It would do insanely well, right? But maybe they're hoping to get a sequel from Software at some point, or spiritual successor, and then they'll announce the Bloodborne PC remake to hype people up, or remaster. We'll have to see. But yeah, I figured I would just mention that apparently Square Enix has a big Final Fantasy announcement coming up. That's going to be something new. Well, technically new. You get what I'm saying. All right. Final topic of the podcast, Sony at CES 2023. How do you guys feel about Sony's presence at CES. So they made a couple of announcements, and I'm not going to talk too deeply about them because I had a whole stream dedicated to this. But I want to say that, to me, the most important announcement that was made, I mean, obviously the Project Leonardo controller is a big one. Very, very cool to see Sony doing that. GT7 coming to PlayStation VR 2. You know, one thing I didn't think about though is they didn't really divulge like to what extent GT7 is going to be available. You know, like, is this just going to be a single mode, or is it like the entire game of GT7 available? We'll have to find out, but it's going to be available at launch, which is pretty cool. For me though, and they also announced Beat Saber's coming to PSVR 2. Victorious, you're saying it's not the full game? Yeah, maybe that would be too good to be true. To me, the biggest announcement from Sony at CES, and I don't know, maybe not everybody agrees with this or feels the same way. For me, it had to have been when Jim Ryan went on stage, or was on stage, and said, hey, we've sold 30 million PS5s. And some people were pointing out that 30 million is really good, but that's still not tracking as well as the PS4. But I think it's like one of these things where, guys, I think we have to kind of pay attention to the fact that Sony managed to somehow sell 30 million PS5s during like one of the most cataclysmic times for production chain issues that we've ever seen. And so the fact that it's even close to the PS4 is very impressive. But it was when Jim Ryan basically said the PS5 shortage is over. I will tell you guys, as a content creator who has been covering PlayStation for many years now, but for the entire time the PS5 was even a thing. You know, a year before the PS5 was even announced, a year and a half before the PS5 was even announced, I've been covering this thing all the way from the beginning to where we are now. To see what happened and the way it happened, and to just know that, damn, like this generation is going to get off to one of the rockiest starts we've ever seen. And to just see so many people for like weeks and months. And again, I'm not trying to be dramatic about it, but I'm just saying, like, I literally witnessed how, on a weekly basis, how the PS5 shortage has affected the PlayStation brand, and in turn affected PlayStation fans and players. I'm genuinely very excited to see what PlayStation is going to be like during the PlayStation 5 generation, now that there is no shortage. Okay? I have gotten this feeling for the past 2 years that a lot of Sony's decision making, you know, a lot of the things that they've done, that a lot of the fans have come out and said, look, like, I don't really feel like Sony has the same enthusiasm that they did during the PS4 generation. I don't feel like Sony is really coming out in a significant way like they would in previous generations. And a lot of people just kind of had this feeling, in the sense that Sony just changed. And they could have, yeah, for sure. We're going to find out. But I've always had this like underlying sense of, but I feel like this is because of the shortage and the pandemic. I really do. Like, I feel like Sony has been behaving very differently in a way that they otherwise wouldn't, because of the shortage and because of their severe issue trying to be able to produce enough PS5s. And I feel like one of the easiest ways to actually confirm this is to just look at how many of their big AAA games are cross-gen. That's very abnormal for Sony. I saw somebody in my comments getting really upset or something, or mad at me. They're like, what are you talking about, man? Sony's always done cross-gen. I'm talking about for their big AAA exclusives. You know, like a lot of times they would make sure that they had, you know, big, I mean, it's not like Sony didn't have big AAA exclusives for the PS5, but I just mean like none of their bigger AAA exclusives would be cross-gen. That's the point. They wouldn't be cross-gen. And they really gave, I think, I mean, just look at the way PlayStation fans were behaving when they found out Horizon Forbidden West was cross-gen. You know, especially when you have Jim Ryan. I know the quote is taken out of context, so don't attack me. I understand, but surely you understand how it looks when he says, you know, we believe in generations, and they're hyping the PS5 to the moon and back to then announce, oh, by the way, Horizon's going to be PS4. Oh, and so is God of War. I'm telling you, man, like a lot of people were not expecting that. And I think that's because of the shortage. I do. I'm telling you, if there was no PS5 shortage, God of War would have been PS5 only. Obviously, it could have run on it can run. It is on the PS4. I'm telling you, if Sony did not have a fear when they announced God of War, I forget exactly when they announced God of War is coming to PS4, but it was like during the thick of the shortage. We found out God of War Ragnarok was coming to PS4 at like a time when the shortage was at like its all-time worst. If there was no shortage, that game wouldn't have come to PS4. No chance. No chance. Sony would have used that game to push as many PS5 units as possible. I'm telling you. Sewell, you're saying good morning, MBG, Eastern Time. I heard you said Final Fantasy. I had to wake up. Yes, both Tactics and 9 are truly great games. Keep it vertical. SO6 for the win. I hear you, Sewell. Yeah, keep it vertical. There we go. That's I think that's what is that going to be a new tagline now? Keep it vertical. Just a way to be our little inside thing, and little knock on a little swipe at the fear mongering. Keep it vertical. It's like a couple years from now, like there's a cataclysmic meltdown of all PS5s that are standing vertical. Never say it again. Never say it again. Don't keep it vertical. Keep it horizontal. Yeah, dude, I'm curious. I'm not familiar with Final Fantasy Tactics. I've heard really great things about it. Not familiar with Final Fantasy 9. Also heard really great things about it. We'll see, man. I don't think Sony's going to let go of this good thing they have going with Final Fantasy. I don't think they're going to let it go. I think they're going to keep it going. I think every major Final Fantasy game that's announced, like major, like mainline remake, mainline game, something I could see something like Tactics. I think these are going to be exclusives. I see it happening. Sony, I think, cares a lot about that. Clearly. But to get back to what I was saying, I really do feel that 2023 could be a special year for the PS5. And I know I've said this before, right? And it's funny because I just made a video talking about this where I said things are really going to change for the PS5 in 2023. And I was surprised. Some of my top comments on that video were people telling me, dude, I would not call 2022 an objectively good year for PlayStation, for all PlayStation fans. And the reason why they were saying that in the comments is because in that video, that's exactly what I said. I said PlayStation definitively had a great year in 2022. Horizon Forbidden West, GT7, The Last of Us Part 1, God of War Ragnarok. And some people were pushing back, basically being like, dude, there were a lot of PlayStation fans who were expecting new stuff from PlayStation. And you know what? I talked about this, and I'll mention it again. I think those comments are a little bit misguided in the sense that I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I don't think any PlayStation fan would look at the output of PlayStation and say that was a bad year. How could you? How could you say a year where you get Horizon Forbidden West and God of War Ragnarok. How could you say that's a bad year? Now, I could understand if you're somebody who says, maybe you're not a fan of those games and you felt like between the remake of The Last of Us and everything else being a sequel, I understand. Like, there is inherently a desire for some new stuff, for sure. And I don't think that anybody who's disappointed in PlayStation in 2022 is disappointed because of their output. I think they're disappointed in that Sony didn't really have that many new first-party game announcements. And I've talked about that. I've talked about how I think Sony, they're holding back a little too much for a little too long when it comes to their first party, to the point where, PlayStation fans, some anyway, are starting to get kind of antsy, a little bit restless, a little bit unsettled. And so the reason why I think 2023 is going to be such I want to say a special year for PlayStation is because I think this is going to be the year of announcements, man. I think this is going to be the year where Sony has zero fear of announcing stuff because of a shortage. On top of that, the overwhelming majority of announcements that we're likely going to get are going to be PS5 only. And I think these two things, combined with the fact that, we could potentially see the PS5 have its best sales year ever. We could see PlayStation have one of their best years ever when it comes to announcements. It's all very exciting. And I know, again, that I've said this previously. I said this in 2022. I said this in 2021. And granted, the key factor is that when I was saying that in 2021, when I was saying that in 2022, the key factor is the shortage wasn't over. Sony never announced that the shortage was over. In fact, we were getting multiple articles a month claiming that the shortage may last for another year or something like that. And that's exactly what happened. Broccoli Rob says, "Can I borrow $1 this week?" You know how it goes, Broccoli Rob. You know how it goes, man. Appreciate the $2, bud. Appreciate it. Disco Cobra 2013. Thank you so much, my friend. You're saying, not sure if you've heard of a channel called Synthetic Man. Synthetic Man. I feel like I may have heard of it in passing, but he seems to think that games like Horizon or God of War are bad. Maybe not his taste in games, but hardly bad games, even though I do agree many games are formulaic. Disco Cobra, I'm going to be honest, I don't know who this individual is. I don't know if they're like really popular or not. I've come across quite a few, not channels, like they're like not channels that are dedicated to bashing, but I mean like channels that are of either popular or maybe not so popular content creators that are giving what seem to be genuine, valid criticism to some of these games, right? Like I don't know who made this video, but I came across this video of a content creator talking about how God of War to them is not a good game. And I was like, curiosity got the best of me. And I was genuinely curious to see, like, was this going to be somebody just trolling and being ridiculous, or was it going to be potentially a actual genuine critique of the game where somebody's like, I'm going to tell you why I don't like this game. And it was a genuine critique of the game. And I'll be honest, like listening to it, while I didn't agree necessarily with a lot of what they said, there were fair points that were brought up. And I think that's ultimately what it comes down to is it's just, you're right. Things do become pretty formulaic. And I think that if there's anything that I think turns some people off from what are, in my opinion, objectively great games, it is that formulaic nature. Like, I feel like you could see an amazing game that does all these things so well, but it has this formula to it that to a lot of people, I think it makes them feel like, oh, I've already done this though. Like I've done this so many times at this point that I don't want to do it anymore. And I think it's just the fatigue of the formula that bothers some people. Now, for me personally, I don't necessarily feel that way. The reason being is because it's like, you know, people, for example, like Ghost of Tsushima, I think is a good example. A lot of people, not a lot, but some people were like, dude, this just feels like a mesh of every open world game refined. And I'm like, yeah, like that's kind of what makes it so good is they've taken all of these good things and good aspects of other, other open world games, and they put it into their game. They refined it and they applied it in a way that made sense, and it made it good. Like I've always said that a game like Ghost of Tsushima, I'm sure many of you remember me talking about it, but I said that a game like Ghost of Tsushima, I approached it, specifically the director's cut, very differently than the first time I played it. And I think that's another problem. I think it's all about timing, man. I think it's about when people are playing games, how they're playing games. All of these things dramatically affect how you ultimately feel about them. So when I played Ghost of Tsushima for the first time, it was just coming off of, The Last of Us Part 2, and it was in the thick of my channel was blowing up a little bit because we were getting very close to the PS5 launch. And I admit, like my attention just wasn't fully there for Ghost of Tsushima. There were just so many other things surrounding me at the time, and I played it and I basically just mainlined the game. I loved it, I appreciated it, but I ultimately felt like when Director's Cut came out the next year, I was like, you know what? I have to play this again. I have to take a completely different approach. And I'm so glad I did, because it changed my perspective on the game entirely, where I did the opposite of mainlining the game. I was just so slow and methodical, and just, I know it sounds silly, but when I played Ghost of Tsushima the first time, it felt like a bit chaotic. To whereas the second time I played it, it felt totally peaceful and relaxed, and like I'm soaking it all in, and I'm savoring it. And the game elevated just so much more. It just was elevated, and it actually changed the way I approach big open world games now, where, I have this kind of pressure sometimes being on YouTube where I feel like I gotta be there day one. But when it comes to like big, massive open world games, I'm going to always try to be there day one for the games I'm excited about, but I'm going to take it very slow. I played Days Gone like that as well, but in more recent years, it was really Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut that changed it. And I guess I'm just saying this because I really do feel like, I don't know, man. I'm telling you, I think when a game like God of War Ragnarok gets amazing review scores like it does, and it's the talk of the town, I guess you could say, for a while, and it's winning all these awards, I just think that there's this natural inclination with people who are maybe a little bit overly critical, or tend to be overly critical, or maybe more cynical people, where it's like maybe for them it suddenly becomes easy to find what they perceive to be flaws in the game, when in reality it's like, I don't know. Like sometimes I get the sense like if this game was not universally praised, like if God of War wasn't sitting at a 94 on Metacritic, but it was sitting at a 74 or an 84, you'd probably be saying almost the exact opposite things you're saying right now. I don't know. Sometimes I listen to critical people a lot of times, and I feel like I fall into this trap myself. I think that there are people who just are naturally contrarians, and they just have this innate, inherent desire on maybe even on a subconscious level, but it could very well be on a conscious level, where they just don't want to agree with the general sentiment, and they will find problems, And some of them I think are real and genuine, and others I feel are maybe a bit like, I feel like maybe you're actively looking for things, you know what I mean? And that's what's weird is I think that today in our modern gaming society, where everything's so interconnected due to the internet, I think that it inherently makes people more critical, where I think that there are unfortunately a lot of people who go into video games almost actively looking to pick them apart, actively looking for things, and that's also due to expectation. I feel like I contribute to that. When I hype up a game, like for example, Spider-Man 2, we're all hyping it up, we're all excited about it. I think that's naturally going to lead to anybody who's paying attention to our excitement. People who are a little, are going to say, you know what, I'm going to be a little bit more skeptical. And now I'm going to go into this game being, I'm going to look for things. I see somebody saying that's a critic's job. Well, of course. But to me, that doesn't sound fun. I see Rashdam saying, so being critical is a bad thing. No. I'm not saying it. Understand this. I'm not here to say what's good and what's bad. It's not that simple. It's about an individual and what they perceive to be good and bad. Like for me, I've noticed with my personality, if I go into something like focused on being critical, I don't really enjoy it as much. I just don't. Like I can very easily begin to to become a little bit cynical about things, I guess, in a way. But then again, if I go into something with my head in the clouds, I overlook things that, at times it's like, maybe it can be good, but other times it can be bad. So I guess what I mean to say is, like, for me personally, and I'm only speaking for me, when I go into something, I try to just take it for what it is. And in that moment when I'm experiencing it, I just try to leave it at that. And then later on, when I'm doing my podcast like I am now, or when I'm going to talk about it more, that's when I'll start to evaluate things a little bit deeper than I normally would. I think, like, for example, the way I consume like TV shows these days, I don't I don't follow anything on the internet regarding TV or movies these days. I just don't. I do not care enough. And so I very much, I guess you could say, I am very much a casual movie / TV goer, right? And when I watch things, the amount of times that I've watched certain things, and somewhere along the lines after watching it, I come across like a video that I'm just scrolling through YouTube, and like there's like a video where like a thumbnail of somebody saying like the worst piece of garbage ever made or something like that, or like they've ruined it, and they're talking about something that I watched, and I'm like watch, and maybe I'll click on. I usually won't click on it, but maybe I will click on it and I'll see what they got to say. But I'll look at the comments and it's just like, oh my god, like people just dogpiling, and I'm like, well, damn, like I had no idea, like I just took it for what it was, and a lot of times, I gotta admit, a lot of times with a lot of stuff that I watch, I don't know what the hell's in my mouth right now, like a hair. A lot of times I walk away from it just thinking, oh, yeah, it was fine. Like it's not too often I walk away being like, oh my God, that was incredible. Sometimes I do. Most times I don't. There are also not that many times where I walk away from something I've watched saying, oh my God, now that was bad. Because a lot of times I don't know. I feel like it's all about I feel somewhat in tune with what I know. There's a decent chance I'm going to enjoy something, to where other times I'm not. It's just how it is, man. I just thought that was worth mentioning, because I just feel like there are just these circles and these groups that exist where if you look for it, sorry, I hit my mic. If you look for it, like, you'll probably find it. Like if you want to find people who hate a specific thing and that's really their whole thing, you can probably find it, So yeah, interesting stuff, man. I think that brought up an interesting conversation, Disco Cobra. So thank you for that. Sewell, you're saying the shortage, referring to the PS5 shortage that we just talked about, is now in our wallets. Yeah, it is, dude. Too many games coming out. PSVR 2 coming out. DualSense Edge. The whole thing. You're right. It is our wallets. Shane Ramsey, you're saying PS5 is off to a strong start with this year with Forspoken and Hogwarts Legacy in the first 2 months. Yeah, dude. I gotta admit, I'm not excited for Forspoken. I have nothing against it. Excuse me. Like I don't think it looks like a terrible game by any means. Um, I just after playing the demo, I just realized that the game's not for me. It's just not. And so I'm passing on Forspoken in favor of Dead Space remake. But I also want to say that I'm going to be interested to see how it's received, how it does when it comes out. And Hogwarts Legacy, you could tell Sony is banking big on this game. Like, you could tell Sony is really anticipating this game is going to sell gangbusters on PS5 because they had a whole state of play for it. They have the marketing rights. I mean, they have the whole thing going on with Hogwarts Legacy, man. And it is releasing. It's multiplat. It's releasing on everything, but this is a game that Sony has really attached themselves to, and I'm curious to see what the sales ratios are going to be if we, at least in the UK. I would like to learn about it in other areas as well. But yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. It is. Yeah, dude. I think PS5 is going to have an incredible year in 2023 all around. Josh Z, you're saying, for more context on Final Fantasy, the first three are mostly considered fun classics. 4 to 10 is the Golden Age, and 11 to 14 before the relaunch is the Dark Age. It's really interesting. I didn't know that there was I guess it makes sense with this many games in the series. There would be a Golden Age, a Dark Age. Everything else is Silver Age. No game is exactly the same. Interesting. 4 through 10. So yeah, I guess 9 does fall under the Golden Age, and 11 through 14. Where does 15? Well, you said the rest is silver, so I guess 15 is Silver Age. Where do you think? I guess a question I have is, all right, going based off this, where do we think Final Fantasy 16 is going to land? Is Final Fantasy 16 going to be is it? I mean, I don't know. I guess a better question to ask is, does Final Fantasy 7 Remake and Rebirth and potentially 16 signal the reemergence? Is this a new Golden Age for Final Fantasy? Or is it just going to be considered? I know it's definitely not the Dark Age anymore. Huh. Interesting, Josh. Well, thank you for that context. I think that helps me that definitely helps me kind of figure out where to compartmentalize this. I see somebody saying 16 is going to be a new Golden Age. Yeah, I'm interested to see how I feel about Final Fantasy 16. That's a game. Honestly, that's a game I'm really excited to talk about when I get into it, because one thing that surprised me, and maybe it shouldn't have surprised me, one thing that surprised me when I played Final Fantasy 7 Remake is I had a lot to say about that game. You guys know, it was in July of 2022. I played that throughout the whole month, and each week I just had a whole section of the podcast dedicated to talking about it, because I was just really. That's not to say that I don't have a lot of thoughts on other games, but I guess I'm just saying I was surprised at just how long that game was and how massive it was, and I almost enjoyed it as well, because that was the thing. I was a little bit nervous about talking about God of War, for example, because I was always unsure, when's too soon? Is it too soon to talk about spoilers and whatnot, So thank you for that, Josh. Zenarkan Blitzer, thank you so much for the 2 generous donations here. You're saying part 1, MBG Final Fantasy X was voted the favorite game of all time by Japanese Famitsu readers. Then Final Fantasy VII won second place. Final Fantasy X is a PS2 exclusive, had great graphics at the time, and it was the first Final Fantasy with voice acting. Saying part 2, Final Fantasy X was the last Final Fantasy game to be made by Squaresoft before they merged with Enix in the 2000s. Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, and 10 were released during the golden age of JRPGs. Final Fantasy X is my favorite Final Fantasy and would love to see a remake. Interesting. So that's really interesting to me then, the idea that Final Fantasy 9 may be the one getting the remake treatment and not 10. But my question is this. I have a specific question here, and that is, why would Square Enix decide to go from Final Fantasy 7 to 9 when it comes to remakes, and skip 8 if, if many of these games at this time period are considered the golden age. Wouldn't it make more sense for them to after 7 go to 8, then 9, then 10? I'm a little confused. Somebody says because 8 is trash. I don't know, man. Everybody seems to have a different pick. I mean, Zanarkhan Blitzer saying his favorite of all time is Final Fantasy X. So yeah, I don't know, man. Right now all I can say is my favorite is Final Fantasy VII Remake. I see somebody saying 8 is iffy, 9 is better. So is there a chance that they'll remake 10 after 9 and then they might just skip 9 or 8? It's all so confusing. But yeah, that's Final Fantasy X must be a really good game. It must be the best Final Fantasy game if it was voted an the all-time favorite game from Famitsu. And Final Fantasy VII taking second place. I'm interested in that then, because that's fascinating to me. Because I really thought that Final Fantasy VII would be considered like the definitive best Final Fantasy game, but I guess not. Very fascinating. Final Fantasy, I gotta say, is a very fascinating series. I'm still so noobish to it, but I'm so intrigued by it. And also, I think it's the passion as well. This reminds me of how I felt about PlayStation in general when I kind of got back into it, where it was really the passion of the community that, I was like, man, these people are really, it's infectious. Josh says, because the company loves 9 the most as creators. Okay, that actually makes sense. That does make sense. So thank you again for those super chats, Zanarkhan Blitzer. That's very, very generous of you. And definitely some good insight there. Definitely some good insight. Jacob, you're saying you think Sony will buy a publisher after the Activision Blizzard deal. Well, I did say this, and hey, I feel like we went most of this podcast without talking about the Activision Blizzard deal. Instead, I talked about The Last of Us Part 2. There are just some recurring topics that always come up. But I will say, man, I do believe that if this Activision Blizzard deal does go through, assuming it does, I absolutely believe Sony will chase a publisher. Which publisher could it be? I have no idea. Your guess is as good as mine, but there are some individuals on my channel that have made it clear that apparently Sony, they're going to be making a trip to the Bank of Japan, getting a nice big loan, and pretty much doing whatever they want at that point. And I could see it happening. I do. I would find it very odd if Sony, lost Bethesda and then witnessed Microsoft take Activision Blizzard and then just did nothing. And I would be surprised if Sony was just like, yeah, we'll just keep buying small studios. They could do that. They could do that. But me personally, if this deal goes through with Activision, I think Sony's retaliating. Absolutely. So thank you for that, Jacob. Sewell, you're saying Final Fantasy 16 is like an FL5. It's great, but it will never be an EKG or EG9. My thoughts, at least. I'm trying to follow you, Sewell. I feel like you're going in these directions with the abbreviations where I'm like, what is he talking about right now? But Sewell, I will keep that in mind. I will keep that in mind, dude. Final Fantasy 16. Do we think Sony's going to give it a dedicated state of play before launch? See, I got to ask these questions now because I was so positive. I was so positive that every major PlayStation launch or game would get a state of play, and then Sony never did a state of play for God of War. Dude, I'm still shocked about that. I really thought that was a thing, but apparently not. A lot of you guys are saying, yeah, it is. Yeah, I just want it to be known, in 2022, we got a state of play for Hogwarts Legacy and not for God of War. Isn't that crazy? To me, that's crazy. Yeah, you're right. I did forget to mention that. They did do weekly videos. I guess in a way that's bigger than a state of play, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, you are right about that. A little bit less eventful in terms of like gathering a bunch of people at one time. But yeah, doing an 8 or 9 week series of videos, I guess that is significantly more extensive than a state of play. Because if you add all those videos together, that's almost like a mini documentary. So yeah. Let me see here. Snuffy, you're saying look into Final Fantasy X HD. Yeah, I might have to, man. I don't know. You guys, I might just wait for the remake. They're gonna have, if Final Fantasy X is really that good, they're gonna remake it, right? They're gonna have to. They're gonna have to. How could they not? I guess that would be like a PlayStation 6 game, though, wouldn't it? I see somebody asking if I watch anime. No, truthfully, I'm not into anime. Could never get into it. Well, actually, I got into Cowboy Bebop, so I've watched that. When I was younger, I would like randomly watch anime, and I didn't know what I was watching, but it was like Toonami or something, like late at night. I was up way later than I should have been, and I'm just watching all these random animes that are coming on Toonami. So I've watched anime, but I just never really got deep into it. Rari2XX, you're saying, I just checked out the Final Fantasy 16 trailer and paid attention this time. I must say that I'm definitely getting it now. Not as a Final Fantasy, not a Final Fantasy fan, but Final Fantasy 7 and this are fire. That's exactly how I feel, man. I mean, I was, dude, I'm telling you, I really didn't want to play Final Fantasy 7 Remake. And I know so many people thought I was insane. They're like, what is wrong with this guy? Like, how can you even say you have a PlayStation channel and not play FF7 Remake? And I always said it was just because I was so intimidated by it. I was actually even afraid I wasn't going to like it. And people were going to be like, wow, bro, how could you not like it? And I was, as we know, I was pleasantly surprised. And you know, the thing that's really getting me with Final Fantasy 16, you talk about the latest trailer, like the scope of it looks huge, and I get this sense of like I do feel like there's going to be some good storytelling, and that automatically gets me. Like I just love a good story in a game, and I feel like there's going to be some drama going on here, and I'm all for that. But it really dude, the combat and the scope and the scale of the battles looks really, really good. Very appealing to me. More so than anything I've seen from Final Fantasy in the past. So it's literally Final Fantasy X Devil May Cry. Dude, that's what I'm saying, man. That's what I'm saying. I love Devil May Cry gameplay. All right, let's see here. Disco Cobra 2013 again. You're saying never really got into any Final Fantasy games. Guess I just don't like the gameplay style. I'm more into hack and slash style games rather than the turn-based strategy. Which ones should I try to get into first? Well, honestly, man, I mean, just from me, and I'm not sure you should be taking this from me because I'm a super noob when it comes to Final Fantasy, but the combat in Final Fantasy VII Remake, it's a perfect blend between like, you know, action-oriented, hack and slash, fast-paced with turn-based strategy. Like you it's hard to explain. I would just recommend, dude, if you haven't seen it, watch some gameplay of Final Fantasy VII Remake, and you'll get a really good idea. But the combat in Final Fantasy VII Remake really stood out to me, and surprised me. And I think Final Fantasy 16 is going to be on that same level. I don't know if Final Fantasy 16 is going to have that same level of. I don't even know if it's going to be turn-based at all. I feel like I read about this, but isn't Final Fantasy 16 just going to be purely action? Like it's not even going to have a hybrid system this time? Maybe I'm wrong about that. And that to me is interesting if true. I'm waiting to get confirmation on that. It's two different styles. Yeah, Final Fantasy. Yeah, so Final Fantasy 16 is pure action combat. Yeah, that's super interesting to me. That's very intriguing. Because I just never really imagined playing a. It's so thought provoking to imagine playing a Final Fantasy game with Devil May Cry like combat. That is enticing to me. So Disco Cobra, I mean, right now, I think the general recommendation, if if you're on PS5 or PS4, is to try Final Fantasy VII Remake. But Final Fantasy 16, based off of everything we've seen, it looks like it's taking a just total like action combat, action RPG oriented approach. No turn-based really stuff. So yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe Final Fantasy 16 could be your first FF game. So thank you for that, Disco Cobra. Roberto, you're saying, I just wanted to say thank you for providing the content that you do. Looking forward to seeing the big PlayStation reveals this year. Well, thank you, man. I always appreciate that. I always appreciate when you guys are showing your appreciation for what I do. I do put a lot of effort into what I do. I try to keep it up every day. Doing daily content can be very difficult. I do enjoy doing it, but it can be difficult to maintain that consistency. So I'm glad you guys appreciate it, and you guys show your appreciation. You keep showing up to the videos, keep showing up to the streams, keep supporting me with super chats and just viewership. So really couldn't ask for much more. So thank you. As an Arcane Blitzer, you're saying MBG, maybe Square Enix is skipping Final Fantasy 8 for Final Fantasy 9. It's because 7 and 8 are modern-based settings, and 9 isn't a modern setting. So they want to have variety. But I'm sure they'll make Final Fantasy 8. It's a good Final Fantasy. It's hard to read. It's hard to read all the Roman numerals properly. I think I nailed that. But see, I didn't know that. I didn't even know that. I guess that's something I should be more cognizant of as well, is looking at Final Fantasy 16 and Final Fantasy 7. Yeah, they do jump around with the setting a lot, don't they? So what setting is Final Fantasy 9? That I'm not sure. Somebody will have to let me know. But yeah, I imagine in the long run, I could see all these games getting remade eventually. I could see that happening. Rari2XX, you're saying, isn't it fair to say we'll get a PlayStation showcase before Final Fantasy 16 releases? Spider-Man 2 comes out in the fall. I believe a showcase is inevitable due to Spider-Man 2 releasing. That's the big question I think a lot of PlayStation fans have, is because Sony didn't do a showcase in 2022, does this mean that we will get a showcase before June? I'm going to be honest, I am not anticipating it. I would love that to happen, and I would be very excited, but I think Sony will continue on with State of Plays for the first 6 months of this year, but I think they're going to go all out in June. And I think you're right. I don't even think it's the fact that Spider-Man 2 is releasing this year. Sony is going to be out at that point. Like, the only first party game that Sony will have actually properly revealed at that point, as far as I'm aware, after Spider-Man 2 releases, is Wolverine. And so by that point, it's almost like, if you imagine it like, there's no more bullets in the chamber, or maybe there's only one more bullet in the chamber, right? So at least from first party. So that alone pretty much dictates that, yes, Sony's going to have a first party showcase. And I think June would be the perfect time to do it. It just makes sense. So you know what? Sony could do 2 showcases this year. I don't want to get too crazy, but it's worth noting that during bigger showcase years, or bigger years where Sony has a lot to show and talk about, and bigger years for the PlayStation console, they could do one in June and they could do another one in September. We've seen it before. It could happen. So one thing I feel pretty confident about, though, I don't like to predict too much, but I do not expect Sony will wait till September of this year to do a proper showcase. That would be insanity. That would be total insanity. I mean, I would hate that. So, Notion Nation. All right, let me see here. So thank you for that, Rory. Snuffy, you're saying you've seen what they are doing with BB. Don't hold out. I'm assuming you're talking about Bloodborne. Dude, I'm gonna tell you right now. If I'm reading what you're saying correctly, you're insinuating that I have some kind of inside track as to what's going on with Bloodborne, bro. I'm gonna tell you right now, I have no contacts, and I keep it that way purposely. I tried one time, and I got burned. And after that, I was like, this ain't worth it. I'll learn about the things the same way you guys learn about them. And I would prefer it that way. Bloodborne, as I said, man, unless you're talking about Blue Box, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm assuming you meant Bloodborne. Actually, maybe you do mean Blue Box simply because of the nature of what we've discussed in the channel. Is that what you're talking about? I'm trying to figure out. So you're saying Xenogears is the best Final Fantasy, just stating facts. Dude, people want Xenogears. And Snuffy, you're saying more the fact we ask, we don't get, LOL. See, now I'm confused because I don't know if you're talking about Blue Box or if you're talking about Bloodborne. You got to tell me because they're two very different things. Actually, in a way, maybe they're not that different, at this point in time where people want to know what's going on and they get nothing. Dude, I'm telling you, okay, you are talking about Bloodborne. Okay. All right, good. So I was correct the first time. Yeah, dude, the last thing I think we heard about Bloodborne, and it was very depressing, is there was an insider, I think, who goes by the name Omnipotent. They're specifically like a From Software inside person. So they they were looking around and they basically came out and they said that they were they were snooping around and trying to figure out what's going on with Bloodborne, and they've heard nothing. They've heard literally nothing about anything related to Bloodborne. Not from Sony's end, not from Software's end. So I don't know, man. It's not looking too good out here. It's not looking too good. Daniel, you're saying, could you imagine if they don't do a showcase? LOL. No, don't even, man. I don't want to imagine that. That would be unacceptable. It's, you know what? The only thing that I could see Sony doing if they were just like batshit insane is like, yeah, we're not going to do a showcase this year, and people are going to get furious. People are going to rage. They do a bunch of small stated plays, but then at the end of the year, they just do after Spider-Man releases, they're like, so we're gonna have a late November, December Wolverine state of play. That's the only thing Sony could do to make people be like, all right. Well, I guess you sly Sony going another year without a showcase. How'd they pull that off? No, dude, I don't even want. There's no way. I'm telling you now, Sony really has. I don't care what anybody says. I know that there are some people who would say that Sony, it would be okay in their eyes if Sony didn't do a showcase. I don't think there's many people that would say that, but there are some that would. I'm telling you, they're wrong. Sony has reached that point where if they don't do a showcase this year, they're going to genuinely piss off their audience to a degree in which I don't think we would have seen before. I know some people might think that sounds crazy, but I'm telling you, if there's one thing that the PlayStation audience craves, it's communication with Sony. That's in an exciting way. And that is not the fans' fault. That's what Sony has conditioned their audience to expect for decades now. So there's no way. You could already sense a sense of frustration in the air when September went by and Sony had no word of a showcase. You could sense the frustration in the air. It was palpable, but you could also sense that the only reason Sony's getting a pass is because they've been doing good and they got God of War coming out. So, all right, but they cannot, I'm telling you, Sony cannot go beyond June of this year without a showcase. That would be problematic. That would be problematic in my opinion. Um, but what do I know, man? I'm just an armchair fan, analyst saying this, talking about it. What do I know at the end of the day? Um, well, I think we've reached that point, guys. I think we've reached the end of Press X podcast this Sunday. Rari2XX again, you're saying also GTA 6 is definitely getting announced this year due to Jim Ryan saying the PS5 shortage is done and already announcing VR2, a showcase is warranted. I wholeheartedly agree. If you listen to my last podcast, I was giving my predictions as to what I think will happen for PlayStation this year. And one of the predictions I gave was I think GTA 6 is going to be announced at a PlayStation event this year. So I agree. And yes, the fact that the shortage is over, I think it's safe to say GTA 6 is going to be a PS5 only game. We know that Rockstar is going to want to try to release this game at a time when there isn't a shortage, obviously. So yeah, everything's lining up now, man. I'm telling you. And this is one of the last things I'll say. One of the things I mentioned in my video yesterday, talking about how 2023 is going to be, we're going to see a big change for the PS5 in 2023. One of the biggest changes that we're going to see is, dude, this is really the year where next gen begins. I hate to say that because it makes people feel like, well, what about the previous 2 years? It's like, no, we've gotten a glimpse. We've gotten a glimpse at some stuff when it comes to next gen, but this is the year really where like we're moving on and we're really going to start to see that the stuff that I think is going to begin to define next gen, the PS5 generation. Yeah, it only took 3 years. That's the thing is I feel like there's always a bit of a slowdown going into a new generation. Like it always takes a little bit of time, but I think this time it's longer than usual because of the pandemic, because of the shortage. Things just got really weird, dude. They did. Things got really weird, and I'm very excited to see PlayStation go back to normal. And to me, PlayStation's normal is kicking ass and taking names. You know what I mean? And it just being somewhat relentless in keeping the hype in their corner at all times, and not false hype either. That's important. And actually hyping people up, having that, as Jim Ryan calls it, the virtuous cycle, right? The virtuous cycle of keeping the hype up, getting people excited, showing fans what they want to see, and then delivering on it, and rinse and repeat. And they make the money. They make the money doing that, and we are satisfied customers. So, yeah, and not crying about COD. Yeah, I hope. I mean, look, there's more things going on, and I'm just choosing not to cover it because it's reached the saturation point. Don't get me wrong. We will be talking about the Activision Blizzard deal more throughout this year, but I really only want to reserve it for when there's really important things to be said about it, because at this point, I don't get, like, it's hard for me to care. It's really hard for me to care. I've moved on from this whole feeling sorry for Sony. Not that I necessarily felt sorry for them, but it's like, I get it, Sony. You don't want this to happen. You did your job. You did what you were supposed to do to try to stop it. But let's move past that. Let's see the Sony that we want to see. I don't want to see Sony talking about this anymore. I want to see them, like I said, kicking ass and taking names. Anyway, guys, man, I feel I don't know. I don't think I got much sleep last night. I don't know what it is. I feel tired. But I think something about the dry air, something in my throat. I got to go rest up a little bit, and I'm gonna end the podcast here. My voice is thrashed right now. So before I do, I want to once again give a big thank you, Rashdom V2. You're saying supply is catching up, but consumer purchases are slowing down because of inflation. Do you think this affects PS5 sales? Also, is GTA 6 a PS5 exclusive or next gen? Actually, real quick, yeah, that's a good question, and I think we do have to factor that in. Now, I don't follow like what's going on with inflation too closely. I don't know if it's like expected to continue rising, or if it's going to kind of plateau, or if it's going to begin to reduce. I don't know. I feel like it's impossible to really understand these things fully, because they just, I don't know. It's all, it all feels like at the end of the day, I'm hearing people say things and then the exact opposite happens at times. But yeah, when you look at like the prices of stuff and how it is still going up, and I think it'll be okay because I mean, I'm going to be honest. I think that there's a very small percentage of people that are going to be carved out, if that makes sense, due to inflation. Like, yes, there will be people who maybe at one point were thinking of getting a PS5, but because of inflation and circumstances, they're going to be like, you know what? I'm going to hold off on it. I think that anybody who wants a PS5 in the end over the next 5-6 years will eventually get one. But I feel like the $500 price point for a console, I don't know. I mean, I just feel like you were either in a position where you probably could have gotten one at some point. I don't. It's hard for me to explain this, but I guess I'm just saying that you would have to be somebody that was maybe on the edge of you were doing okay, and then because of inflation, everything that's going on now, you're not doing so okay. You know what I mean? And I feel like a PlayStation console is pretty much a luxury item, for most people. It's not a necessity. And I get this feeling that most people who had their sights set on a PS5 will get one. I think the worst case scenario for most people, not all, but most people, is they might have to wait a little bit longer. They might have to save up a little bit slower over time, because I'll be honest, like, I know people say things like, oh, if you can't afford a video game that's full price or a console or whatever, then, or whatever, your priorities are messed up. I don't look at it that way. I think that's a bit harsh because I feel like, look, man, people fall on hard times financially. That doesn't mean that like they, nobody wants to have to feel like they have to give up video games because of that, like I don't think somebody is wrong for still having a great desire to want to play video games, even though they may be struggling financially. And so, we'll see, man. I don't know when exactly there's going to be a PS5 price cut. I feel like that's not going to happen anytime soon, but that's a good question. Inflation slowing down sales. We're going to find out, man. We're going to find out very soon. And you know how we're going to find out? Because you heard it from Sony. The shortage is over, and they got some of their biggest games dropping this year. If they can't manage to, like, I'll put it this way. If we don't see a significant bump in PS5 sales this year between the games that they have launching and the fact that the shortage is over, that could be a problem. And that could be inflation at work. So time will tell. And as for GTA 6 being exclusive, I think what you're asking is if it's going to be, well, first of all, GTA 6 will not be a PS5 exclusive. No chance. Will it be a next-gen only game? I think so. It would be insane if GTA 6 came out in like 2025 or something, and it's like, it's also releasing on PS4. That would be, I don't even think I'd buy the game at that point. I'd be so pissed. That'd be ridiculous. So, all right, guys, that's going to do it, though. Thank you seriously so much to everybody who donated a super chat. Another great podcast episode. Really can't thank you guys enough for the support that you continue to show the channel and show me here. And, I look forward to doing the podcast every week. And so knowing that you guys are always here, always in full support, just makes it that much better. So that does it, man. One last favor I'm going to ask you guys before you head out, just hit that like button for me. If everybody contributes to hitting the like button before you leave, then we should easily be able to get to 400 likes. And so, yeah, that does it, man. Episode 142, I think that's the correct one. I got to update some stuff afterwards. Episode 142 in the books. I'll be interested to see what happens over this next week. And we will hopefully reconvene here next Sunday, same time, same place, with some new topics. So that does it. I will catch you guys hopefully in a video tomorrow. And I hope everybody enjoys the rest of their Sunday. But I'm out. Until next time, guys, take care.